sentiment, maybe anxiety is high, and a quarter say no, I've been through worse. One of my favorite karaoke songs. Oh, really? Sure. Karaoke. Back in a moment.
Good evening, everyone. This is Kristen Cook, Staff Liaison to the Public Safety Commission. We are waiting for one more commissioner. And if I could ask that everybody turn your cameras off, except our commissioners, so we can just get a quick head count, please, so our chair can start the meeting shortly. Pat, it's Kristen Cook. Are you able to turn your video off until it's time for your public comment?
Pat Dixon, would you mind turning off your video until it's public comment? No problem. And you're on mute too, just so you know, which is good for right now. Staff, I think we should go ahead and begin. We have one commissioner that's not here, but we do have a quorum.
That sounds
Okay.
fine, sir. Thank you.
I want to call this meeting to order, the West Hollywood Public Safety Commission meeting for April 11th, 2022. And we'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather and that is currently known as the city of West Hollywood is occupied, unceded, seized territory of the Gabrielino, Tongva, and Gabrielino Kizh peoples. Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Hallman, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I pledge the allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Hallman. Roll call.
Commissioner Balbone.
Present.
Commissioner Hallman.
Present.
Commissioner Oliver.
Present.
Commissioner Roman.
Present.
Commissioner Soon-Shiong.
Present.
Vice Chair Roche.
Present.
Chair Berger.
Present. Adjournment requests.
Chair, I have one.
Okay.
I'd ask that we adjourn in the memory of the 14 people who were murdered by terrorists in Israel since our last meeting. And I'll send the names to Kristen, but the victims include police officer Amir Khoury, who gave his own life in the protection of others. So I ask that we adjourn in their memories, and may their memories be a blessing.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Oliver. Commissioner Balbone.
I'd like to adjourn, and I don't think it's a complete count, but there's an estimation of 1,842 civilians killed in Ukraine. Upwards estimates of those could be 7,000, and I'd just like to adjourn in their memory.
Thank you, Commissioner Balbone. Approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
So it was moved by Commissioner Oliver and seconded by Commissioner Hallman. Roll call.
Commissioner Balbone.
Yes.
Commissioner Hallman.
Yes.
Commissioner Oliver.
Yes.
Commissioner Roman.
Yes.
Commissioner Soon-Shiong.
Yes.
Vice Chair Roche.
Yes.
Chair Berger.
Yes. Approval of the minutes.
So moved.
And I'll second it. Moved by Commissioner Balbone and seconded by Chair Berger. Roll call.
Commissioner Balbone.
Yes.
Commissioner Hallman.
Yes.
Commissioner Oliver.
Yes.
Commissioner Roman.
Yes.
Commissioner Soon-Shiong.
Yes.
Vice Chair Roche.
Abstain.
And Chair Berger.
Yes. We're going to
Thank you.
move to public comments. Mario, can you put your video off, and Yola Dore, can you put your video off for now until we have public comments? Thank you. We have listed, I believe, 4 public comments right now, and after which we will see if, does anybody else anticipate they're going to want a public comment? Okay, let's go with that for now. We're going to have Manny Rodriguez is up first.
Chair, I don't see
Anthony.
Manny in the meeting yet.
Okay, so we'll move on to Chelsea Byers.
Hi, good evening. Really grateful to be with you all. Good evening to staff and Chair Berger and all the commissioners here tonight. I'm going to be sharing 2 items. First is in my capacity as liaison from the Human Services Commission to this Public Safety Commission. I wanted folks to know that we are at the very beginning of our 3-year funding cycle process. You may already know this because at our last meeting, we had heard recommendations from commission and board members and liaisons. So just thank you to Commissioner Balbone, who presented the recommendations on behalf of this commission at that time. We have our first public hearing taking place tomorrow night, which is very exciting. Some information that might be helpful ahead of that. In the fiscal year 2021-22 budget, we, as a Human Services Commission, renewed 33 contracts totaling 25 different nonprofit organizations for just over $5 million to the social service programs throughout West Hollywood, which is really exciting. This next cycle, it's the first time in 3 years that we've had an opportunity to re-grant and to consider what new services people need. And boy, are we at an exciting time to think about it coming out of the pandemic. There's a really big list of organizations that have not been funded by the city that have gotten information about this funding process that we'll be able to hear from in the coming days. So looking forward to seeing what new information we might be presented as a city tomorrow in terms of what new ways we can have our residents' needs met. And as a reminder, it's about $5 million that we break up for social services contracts. 25 contracts or 25 different nonprofit providers, 33 different contracts in this last cycle. So it'll be really exciting to think about what's coming down the pike this time. Again, tomorrow night is our first public hearing. And then on April 26th, we have an opportunity as a commission to discuss those priorities and start to think about how the RFP will be processed and put out come May. So I'll keep everyone posted on this as the process continues to unfold, but just wanted to share where we're at with that. I hope that we have more participation in the process and hope we get to hear from more community members around it. I think that's all I have to say as a commissioner liaison. And then I just wanted to take that hat off for a second and step into a personal capacity and just say thank you to this commission for the work raising the really important issues on public safety that have been fueling all the conversations across the city for the last couple of weeks. We're now at what feels like a really new place when it comes to transparency and the potential for accountability. And I believe that'll really support the work of defining how we meet community needs more clearly. There have been so many new voices activated by this recent conversation, and that's a really good thing, I think. It's certainly time consuming and emotionally fraught, but it's really worthwhile work. And I always say, and like that saying, that the reward for good work is more work, as they say. So let us all be so fortunate to have more of it. I just also want to continue to echo the need to align our city resources and our city budgets around service delivery expertise. We could really do so much more to more acutely and intentionally meet the needs of our community members, particularly the needs of the unhoused community, by fueling transformational and life-affirming programming through the social services contracts, as opposed to those with the existing sheriff department contract. I really think that we need a more collaborative approach to community care and safety that yields to allow for the more appropriate response and makes the necessary space for that to happen by sharing the necessary resources to occur that. We're not really the only community thinking this way. I just wanted to add my home community, Flagstaff, Arizona. I'm going to take one more minute since I'm sharing 2 things, if that's okay, Chair. My town that I grew up in, went to college in Flagstaff, Arizona, approved a pilot contract for a new program. I'm quoting this directly from the paper, that offers solutions to rising calls for service related to public intoxication, behavioral crisis, and mental health, something similar to what we're doing here in West Hollywood. They say, though, the limitations are that program will run 10 hours, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. The police, the sheriff, and the fire department there are really excited about this program, but recognize its limitations. And I just sort of want to say that we're at a moment where we're seeing and transforming new solutions, and the limitations are really going to feel out how much they're able to be accomplished and effective. So just as
Okay,
thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chelsea Byers, and thank you for attending. You're always good for attending. Let's see if we can go with, is Manny Rodriguez on? Okay, we'll go to, I believe, Ruth Williams. I wasn't sure if Ruth Williams, we had a question mark if she was going to speak or not. Okay, let's move on to Rick Watts.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. My comment is with regard to a problem property over at 1280 North Sweetser Avenue. It is an abandoned property that has been vacant for years, allegedly pending development, but it is a fire hazard, and it almost went up in flames a week ago last Thursday morning. After vagrants once again broke into the property and started a fire on the inside. Thankfully, it didn't engulf the place. The landlord supposedly was going to tear the place down, but that's been the rumor for a long time. And I just noticed the other day that, or actually just earlier this afternoon, that now it is up for sale
Rick,
again.
we lost you. I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Rick?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Rick.
Okay.
Okay, we got you back now.
Okay,
Go
sorry.
ahead. Staff, can you keep the timer going?
I'll stand still. So again, I'm calling regarding 1280 North Sweetser Avenue, which is
Rick, we lost you again.
Wait. Okay.
Chair, I think it might be your.
Is it me or?
Can everybody else hear?
Yeah,
Rick?
I can hear him.
We
I
can
can
hear
hear
him.
him.
Okay, so Tori, it's on your side. Rick, please continue your comments while
Thank
Tori
you.
checks his audio.
Thank you. Anyway, the property owner has been repeatedly requested to tear the property down and said that he was going to do it. Now it is up for sale again, which it looks like it's going to further delay whatever action is being, it was supposed to happen to clear the property of the house. It is an attractive nuisance for vagrants, criminal activity as well, because there were just over the fence there were two cars that were torched, and another one that was keyed in retaliation, they think, to a call from the folks that were witnessing vagrants breaking into the property. And it also there are dead trees in the back that are bone dry, that have fallen over and already knocked over power lines from the corner property on Fountain, and it is a breeding ground for vermin. And I've been in touch with Danny Rivas and Dan Mick. Danny supposedly told one of the neighbors that it was supposed to be torn down after this last incident. It was supposed to be torn down within the next week or so, but then I see this for sale sign in front of the property, which looks like that's going to delay it further. So I asked the commission to do whatever you can in concert with Danny and Dan Mick and council to force this owner to clear the property and just fence it off, so that to eliminate it, eliminate the attractive nuisance and fire hazard that it is. Because if that fire had broken through the roof and done so during high Santa Ana winds, which we had only a week before, embers from the dead trees and from the house itself could have been blowing all the way down the block and touching off house spot fires on buildings, numerous buildings down the block. So it's, like I said, it's a fire hazard. It's an attractive nuisance for criminal activity and a breeding ground for vermin. And this property owner, this irresponsible property owner, needs to be forced to act. And if he's not going to do it, then the city needs to do what it can to do it and send him the bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick. I may be having the problem with my computer. So if we see it frees up again. I may have to restart this. It may be me because I couldn't hear him sometimes. Okay, is Manny Rodriguez on? Okay, let's go on with, I believe it was Adam Darvish.
I Chair
Adam
Berger.
Darvish.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Yes, we hear you.
Great. Good evening, Chair Berger and Vice Chair Roche and commissioners and staff. I am making a comment as a resident tonight about what's on the agenda. I think this item that's addressing neighborhood watch, reimagining neighborhood watch. I've had a discussion with Kristen Cook, and also I think Jasmine still oversees that program, and have given my input to Jasmine, but I'm so glad that's on the agenda. And in my mind, as a resident that some of you know was impacted almost a year and a half, almost 2 years ago now, by a high-speed vehicle that was going down south on Larrabee, almost killed me at 2 a.m. as I was sleeping in my bedroom. Kind of opened my eyes, and I was traveling for work, so maybe I'm the unusual case. But I think most residents are not really aware of that program or block to block, and that part of that may be just their fault of not being engaged. But overall, as I sort of researched and got connected to Jasmine, to Kristen, and looked at the one that's assigned for our area, I think is a highly populated and is a part of the town that has all the bars and hotels and now cannabis stores and a bunch of other stuff going on, from San Vicente to La Cienega, and then from north it covers from Sunset all the way down to Santa Monica. So that's a large area that I believe is assigned to one person that I talked to. I think is he, I forget his name now, does a great job. And then the Normal Triangle too, I think it's Bobby that does a great job. It's just that I think for our area, as being as large as it is, and so much activities at 2 a.m, from customers from bars, hotels, and other activities going on, maybe that area is too large from San Vicente to La Cienega to cover the Rainbow District. So as you all reimagine that, I'd like to be involved and give input. I know you reach out to residents. It would be nice to split that into maybe 2 or 3 pockets within that area. And again, the other thing is maybe advertising the program through, I don't know, newsletter, maybe it's online and people have to search, but a lot of people don't know about it. I know my neighbors don't know about it. So that's all great. Again, thank you for a great job that you do and your focus on keeping all of us safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam Darvish. Anthony Arenas.
Hi, my name is Anthony Arenas, and I'm a born and raised resident of Los Angeles and someone who frequently travels to West Hollywood from the San Fernando Valley for medical services. And I wanted to call in support of the West Hollywood Public Safety Commission's proposal to reallocate 3.2 million of the city's 20 million LASD contract into the city's social services budget. I know that what other Angelinas need is community-based services and support for people who are experiencing houselessness. Imagine the positive change that you could enact in West Hollywood, not by giving 20 million to the sheriff's department, but reallocating it to community-based services. We know that the sheriff's department has historically misused direct funds to community-based services and community affordable housing. So real public safety means transforming the conditions that lead to harm in the first place. It means rejecting the inevitability of our county continuing to top world records in terms of the incarcerated population of people with mental health needs or the number of killings at the hands of law enforcement. We also deserve a transparent and ethical relationship with all departments contracted with, let alone one that produces a weekly scandal like the sheriff's department. The sheer amount of money the sheriff's department is charging for each single deputy, combined with what we know about more effective less expensive social services makes the case clear that this is not a debate and the facts are facts. So do the right thing. We're all watching. Sincerely, Anthony Arenas. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony Arenas. Myra Friedman.
Good evening, commissioners. I've never spoken here before. I am a 43-year resident of West Hollywood. I am disabled and I'm a senior. I was horrified today when I was looking to see if your meeting was going to be on Channel 10 to see a very enthusiastic commercial for scooters. And it just made me think of the video I saw this past week of a woman crossing in a crosswalk, being struck down by a scooter who had run a red light. He was not wearing a helmet. And then another scooter rider stopped. He was riding on the sidewalk and he also was not wearing a helmet. And being disabled and with our narrower streets, thanks to out zones, I'm very, very worried about this. I very rarely go out on Santa Monica or any other big street like Sunset because I'm afraid. I'm petrified. The other thing is I love having the sheriff's police there protecting me. I have them and a big German Shepherd. And other than that, I feel like a terrible target. So I just wanted to say, please don't lower the amount of sheriff's police. We need them. And they've helped me so much in the past. And that's all I really want to say. And I hope you have a good meeting. And I think that the idea of taking away sheriffs is ill-advised and hasty. And I ask you to rethink it. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Myra, for coming. Staff, did you get the addresses that Rick Watts mentioned? And also, can we send some information about the updates or the status on the scooters?
I will connect with code compliance. It sounds like Danny Rivas is already in the loop with Mr. Watts. And I'm sorry, Chair, what was the second request you just had?
That Myra Friedman asked about the scooters. Do we have the latest status that we can send her about where we are with everything with the scooters?
I don't.
Safety and.
I'll have to follow up with that relevant staff.
Okay, because yeah, we had a nice update a while ago, but I don't know if it's been updated. Myra, we hear you, and it has been being worked on by a couple of the departments. Would like to keep you abreast about where we are with everything with that. And everybody, thanks for coming. And let's see if we have Manny Rodriguez. Are you on, Manny?
And Chair, I believe Manny Rodriguez is going to speak on item 9A.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Manny.
Okay, we'll wait in. Do we have any more public comment? Okay, commissioner comments. Commissioner Hallman.
Thank you, Chair Berger. First, I will start by saying that I am personally not a defund the police individual. I can't speak for anyone else, but our February vote has caused a reaction, which I think is an important reaction. I think it's important that the community gets involved. Most people who know me know that I am an upset the apple cart type of individual. And that's why I voted in this manner. I wear two hats in this city. I am proud to be a public safety commissioner. I have also been the East Side Neighborhood Watch captain since 2015. And since 2015, there were numerous things that we asked for. Cops on bikes, a substation, deputy foot patrol, and on and on and on. These things have not been addressed. My hope is that with our vote pushing this to our city council And now we have an audit that something will be done. There are so many things that our deputies are required to do that they're not qualified to do. I am a huge admirer of now Commander Eddie Ramirez. I am sad to see him go. I first met Commander Ramirez when he was Lieutenant Ramirez, and he was the one sheriff's official that was on the east side helping us. I don't believe Lieutenant, now acting Captain Mulder, is with us this evening, but he and I spoke earlier, and I shared my feelings with him. I love our sheriff's department, but I think they need help. The city needs help. Residents don't feel safe. So it's time for a solution. And that's the responsibility of our city council. It also does sadden me that I feel that some on council might be using this very important issue as a re-election campaign item. We should always put the safety of our residents first. Residents come to me and they say they're not safe. So I voted in this manner because I'm like, I'm tired of this. Something needs to be done. I fully support our sheriff's department. Again, I will say I'm not a defund individual, but I'm an upset the apple cart type of person. And in my feeling, that's what we've done. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, I was muted. Commissioner Oliver. Thank you, Commissioner Hallman.
Thank you, Chair. So I guess I want to echo what Commissioner Hallman said, but first I just wanted to thank Lieutenant Mulder and Deputy Kim for they allowed us to ride along for a morning and really see what it is that the sheriff's deputies encounter on a day-to-day basis. And we have a nighttime ride along scheduled, but I think it's important because what it does is it doing that ride along shows us, what doesn't fit neatly into a spreadsheet. It shows us, hey, when a business's burglar alarm goes off, why are 5 cars necessary? Well, you don't know what you're going to encounter. So it was a good and informative experience. I'm looking forward to the nighttime one, and I would encourage every commissioner to do a ride along. The other thing that I wanted to mention, and we actually have someone in the room who can speak on it, but perhaps it may not be appropriate tonight, maybe another meeting, but it's our Sheriff's Department volunteer program. And I'm in the process now of applying for it. I'm going to volunteer a minimum of a half day every week. So that's 4 hours minimum. You can do more, but 4 hours is the minimum. And essentially what we do, what I will do and what volunteers do is act as eyes and ears in the community, driving a civilian car and freeing up officers, deputies for response to crimes in progress. And also we staff the front desk. And I will say, in terms of, as we're talking about creating new departments and creating unarmed members of the community or staff members, what better way than to get community members, people who are part of this community, to volunteer their time that won't cost the city anything. And these are not armed sworn officers. So perhaps it's something to discuss tonight, perhaps it's something for another meeting, but I'd like to invite Dimitri at some point to speak on the volunteer program. And then I would like to say, I have some real regrets about how the public discourse was conducted over these last several weeks. We saw it peak at City Council the other night. And just generally, I think that conversation should have started here at the commission. And I said this before, that I thought that our motion and our action was rushed. And the conversation, the 6-hour conversation that took place, or it was 4-hour conversation at council, should have taken place here at our commission first. So I regret how that was handled. And I also, like Commissioner Hallman, I wanted action. The status quo, I don't think anybody thinks the status quo is working, whether you think that there are too many police, not enough police. I think that this is a conversation that we all need to be having, a careful, considerate conversation, and not a rushed or ideological conversation. We got an audit, and that's huge. Overall, I think it was good for the community. The process wasn't easy for this. And I think, perhaps we all look back and wish we had done something different along the way. But at a time when people aren't feeling safe, what matters is that we have accountability in the resources that our city is investing in to help keep people safe. It's been my desire to bring attention to that lack of accountability. And frankly, I thought, call it upset the apple cart or disrupt the status quo. But I saw that as a mechanism really for how to accomplish that accountability. We've been asking for foot patrols, for bike patrols, and different community police approaches for years. And we're having that conversation now as a community. I do believe that law enforcement is necessary to keep our community safe. And I also think that other resources are necessary to address the humanitarian crises like homelessness and mental health, things that officers are not uniquely trained to do. But I do hope that we can figure out how to move forward as one community together from this conversation and to bring it back to what actually matters, which is keeping our community safe. And that includes our sheriff's department being open and transparent. The audit that council pushed for will help accomplish that. Ultimately, I do not support defunding the police. I don't think most of us in the community do. And the good news is that in a city like ours, we have enough resources to not have to choose between fighting crime and providing resources for those who need it most. So I think it's time now that we find a way to move on and elevate this conversation and start talking about what we need in the community to keep us safe so that people feel safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Oliver. Commissioner Sun Xiong.
Thank you so much. And I want to echo the sentiment of the former 2 commissioners who spoke. I also watched the discussion of City Council, which included a lively discussion of public safety. And I want to talk on 2 elements today, facts and also the tactics that have been employed to shape our understanding of the facts. And so the first bucket of facts on crime. The majority of the crime spike was a massive increase in the theft of items, which cost around more than $1,000. And this relates to people who are pickpocketing phones at clubs and people who are stealing unsecured packages from mailrooms. Another fact that I want to highlight is that 2 out of 249 crimes were solved. This included a few arrests of people who were pickpocketing at clubs, and also the majority of sheriff's officers' efforts related to gathering intel on whether people were intoxicated or where the phones were. This is a direct quote from the officers during the meeting. Another fact is that 122 homeless people in the city were arrested. I recently saw that 1 homeless person was arrested for failing to comply to a request of $300 for not wearing a mask. Another fact about this contracting process, I've asked for unit costs of salaries since September when I joined and what drives those costs. And in the presentation from the Sheriff's Contract Bureau, it was stated that costs rose only 3%, later only 36%, but in reality, it's actually closer to 100%. So $12.4 million in 2012 paid for 67 officers. In 2022, we're looking at $20 million for 60 officers. And so that represents neither a rise of 3 or 36%. And the information that was presented to us and to myself was not in a format that made sense to me. I don't have budgeting expertise or experience. I'm not an accountant. And so I contacted Civilytics, a nonprofit organization that is known for their ability to contract with nonprofit organizations in the criminal justice reform space and also with cities. They do not have a contract, and they did this pro bono because of the value that they saw of this process in West Hollywood and how West Hollywood is taking a leadership position. And I also want to flag that the Sheriff's Department in LA County is being sued by the city of Compton for overcharging the use of its substation, and also already undergoing an audit in the city of West Hollywood, in addition to 5 audits in the county for their overcharging of cities. I also want to talk about fear, which some of the public commenters spoke on today. It's really difficult to fight fear with numbers and insistence on numbers. And this fear and sense of fear is very real, and I don't wish to diminish it or to dismiss it. What I want to emphasize is that this is not a zero-sum game between whether or not that fear is acknowledged, but rather it's a discussion to some extent of morals, that real allocating dollars to social services represents a fraction of the contract of the sheriff's office and would go directly to low-income communities, including our houseless community. And the sheriff's office is stating that this should instead go to the proactive stopping of crime when it happens, meaning the proactive looking for those mail thieves or those pickpocketers. I want to return to the fact that 2 out of 249 crimes were solved at a time when the sheriff's office did not have this option on the table to reallocate a fraction of its budget. And so what we're being presented with is the claim that, in a city of around 2 square miles, 60 officers is not enough. And the nature of the discourse, which I'm really grateful has been brought up today, is potentially distracting from the core issue of fiscal responsibility. And there's been a lot of intimidation, discrediting, attacks on me personally. I don't fear that, but what I do fear is our ability to be distracted from a department which I fear is lying. And there's on the receiving end of information that when it comes to sheriff's elections, crime is down in LA County. But when it comes to sheriff's contracts, crime is up at various different percentages in various different formats. I also want to echo the sentiment that's been discussed over a number of meetings of the violence of this department, which includes 18 deputy gangs, including one in Compton called the Executioners, a department which last week arrested one of its officers for child sex abuse, and a department which is suing a whistleblower for calling out officers kneeling on an incarcerated person's neck for 3 minutes the year of the George Floyd protests. So I want to end there, and I want to open this discussion. I look forward to continuing it and want to just acknowledge the leadership that West Hollywood is taking in this moment.
Thank you, Commissioner Soon Cheong. If we do put this on our agenda and we can look at this on our work plan, I know you stated a lot of facts, but we will have to have all of the information and opposing sides and debate and everything with the public as well. I just want to mention that to the public that if we do something like this, we're going to have it very fair and verified so all parties can respond. Commissioner Balbon.
I do want to state in that case that every single number and figure I stated is directly from the department itself, from its publicly available documents, as well as direct quotes from last week's city council meeting.
Okay, I understand, but it's just something that we want to have available for everybody that's in our meeting when we do discuss. Thank you. I'm not questioning what you're saying. That's just a policy that I think that we should adhere to. Commissioner Balbon.
Thank you, Chair Berger. So a couple of things. I wanted to first mention that we are having a follow-up conversation regarding safety in the community related to nightlife safety. We're going to have a focused group that is going to represent not only the Women's Advisory Board, the Public Safety Commission, but also the LGAB and the Transgender Advisory Board. And that session is going to be on the 25th. and it's at 6 p.m. I'm planning to attend, but I just wanted to make sure that folks knew that that was going to be happening. And that's a direct follow-up so that we could hear more voices in the community based on the work that was started by a joint subgroup between ourselves and WAB. I also wanted to mention that the city's hosting cleanups. I did one of the cleanups this weekend and it was enlightening. I got to meet a lot of people who were walking around asking me what I was doing. And they gave me thoughts on safety, on cleanliness, on things that are happening around our community. I would strongly suggest taking the opportunity. It was a great way to meet some people. And then lastly, I want to share some of my thoughts and comments. I respect every member of this commission. I think people here are here because they have a passion to do what's right and to support different views, which is one of the things West Hollywood does incredibly well. I also want to make sure that I've heard a lot about people are watching us. I wish people were listening more. And when I say that, I'm not talking about any individual, but there are a lot of views on this issue and they're incredibly complex. And I think it's our job as a commission to take a balanced view on behalf of the people in the community that we represent. And we represent all of the people, even people we may not personally agree with. So I just want to make sure that that's something that I say out loud because I do believe that. And I think everybody here believes that. And I think that's our job, is to really listen and to be insightful. I also think that this contract with the sheriffs is complex. Any contract that we would have with police would be complex. This particular contract is complex. It was covered in November. It was covered again in detail at this meeting. We will probably cover it again. The audit that was talked about at the last city council meeting, there is already an audit of this budget that was put forth, I think, in 2020. So some of what we're seeing was already in motion. And the last point that I want to make is I have really tried to get at data from surrounding cities on their public safety, on their arrests, on what's happening in their community. And as frustrated as we might be, our reports are published. Everybody can see them. We may not agree with them, but every darn month you can look and you can find those reports. There's a level of transparency that we have. It may not be enough when we have this much of a budget and this much of a responsibility, but I'd like to call out the fact that people are at the table. The same sheriff's department that serves the entire county, at least locally, we have our numbers in the city of West Hollywood. And that is something that should help us as we go through this dialogue, because they're there and they are available. And yes, we could always have more, but they are available. And the last thing that I do want to mention is Commissioner Sun-Chung, you mentioned the arrest of homeless people. One of the things that we talked about in several of our meetings is aggravated assault. And aggravated assault has increased over the last couple of years. Unfortunately, a lot of that has been homeless on homeless aggravated assault. And I just want to make sure that I highlight that. I'm not sure if all of the arrests that you talked about fell into that category, but it has been a problem. And we've had people come here and talk about it. If you walk around the city quite a bit, you will see it. You will see people harming each other who are unhoused. And there is a response that's needed when that happens. So I think when we talk about some of these numbers, let's make sure that we go deep enough when we ask all of the questions, because one of the things I've been keeping an eye on is aggravated assaults. And unfortunately, homeless people are hurting each other in our city. So I just want to make sure that we dig deep. And when we look at the trends, that's one that we know has been up. It's unfortunate. I don't have all the right answers. I think the Met team can help. But I also know that when someone's hurting somebody else, someone's got to intervene. So I thank you. And again, I respect everybody here. I think we're having good dialogue. It's difficult dialogue. And I just hope that we continue to have respectful conversations. And most importantly, that we listen to all of the people in the community that we represent, because we do have opposing views on this topic.
Thank you, Commissioner Balbone. If if we can be careful, because I can feel that Commissioner Soon-Shiong feels like she wants to respond. When you address somebody, please try not to do that, because we're going to get something going again. If we have an item, I understand what you said, and it's just, I think it's a little bit, I can just imagine what's going to get going here if we're not careful. Commissioner Roche.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, fellow commissioners. Nice to see all your faces. I'm going to make this brief. I did not have anything prepared, but I do appreciate all of your comments thus far. I just want to reiterate some comments I made back in November regarding public safety. And now that we have some new attendees in this meeting today, I would also like to share that with them as well, that as we continue to have this conversation about public safety, it is so important for everyone to understand what that means, not only for themselves, but for our community as a whole. I know we each have an idea of what that's how that's reflected, and the intersections that arise from that is so tremendous in this conversation. We are all impacted differently, and we all have different experiences, and there is no one size fits all. However, if we do not consider the various ways in which we are all being impacted and how we are not feeling safe and what exactly that means, we won't be able to actually find creative solutions. So I really just invite everyone to think about just creatively how we can look at this. I appreciate those on this call who are interested in finding solutions and actually thinking outside the box. I know that our go-to historically is to rely on our sheriff's department to solve these problems. I'm going to, on record, say I don't think that is always the best solution for the variety of issues that we are facing. So with that said, I just encourage everyone on this call and those who are not, who might be watching on a later time, just think about what that can look like. How can we lean in on our utilizing our volunteers, utilizing our community members to tap into and access ways that we can support one another that do not rely on sheriff's departments. I'm not saying that there's not a role for them in terms of safety. There's a specific role, but this also goes back to why I and this commission voted for a city-led police department back in November of 21. If you were not there for that meeting, I ask you to go back and watch that meeting. But there is something to be said for having a city-led police department that is controlled by the city, that allows us to have absolute transparency and adhere and meet the needs of our constituents in a way that I believe the county is unable. I'm grateful for those who have benefited from the support of the sheriff's department, but I'm also very concerned for those who have not been. So with that said, I will conclude, but I am very excited to continue this conversation with all of you this evening. And thank you for speaking your truth and being transparent about where you stand.
Thank you, Commissioner Roche, and thank you all, commissioners. You're all top quality people, in my opinion, and you're all successful. And we have a good commission. We have the best commission I've ever been in with this group. And I just want to say, yeah, we're under a lot of pressure, but you're a good group, and so we'll just continue on. Okay, so let's go to item 9. unfinished business 9A, and I believe that we have Manny Rodriguez as a public commenter.
Yes, Chair. And just to give a brief background before we get started here, I'd like to reintroduce you all to Jessica Newcomb. Sorry for my hoarse voice. I'm recovering from being sick. But Jessica is with us tonight, and I see you. Good to see you, Jessica. Thanks for joining us. And we are so excited to have her as part of the internal public safety team. She is our public safety specialist and kind of a woman of many talents and many projects. And one of those new projects is assisting the city with reimagining Neighborhood Watch. She's working very closely with Jasmine, whom you all know very well, those of you that have been commissioners for a while. So public safety will be working with community and legislative affairs kind of as we think about Neighborhood Watch. What we're looking for tonight, and I'll also let Jessica just say hello to you all as well, is just some initial thoughts to get the ball rolling. Later on in your agenda, we're going to be talking about the city manager-led community safety and well-being plan that we're about to kick off. And so again, we're here tonight just to kind of get your initial thoughts about Neighborhood Watch so Jessica can start taking some notes and using your feedback. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jessica just to say a quick hello.
Hi, everybody. Good evening, commissioners and everyone on this call. Yes, I am Jessica. So yeah, I'm here to listen to all of you and get your feedback and suggestions as we are moving into this reimagining of Neighborhood Watch. Yeah, so just let me know. Feel free to call me anytime. I'm always there, or email me. And yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. And with that, Chair, I could turn it back to you to take public comment, and then we could probably get the discussion going. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Manny Rodriguez.
Hi, this is Manny Rodriguez. I'm Vice President of the West Hollywood West Residents Association. And I just want to encourage, and I think the staff report really sets a good tone and gets everybody on the right track. You know, Neighborhood Watch is a 1970s, old-fashioned, eyes on the street, which is very good. We all should have eyes on the street to crime, but it's sort of, people have lost interest in it. What the city should really be doing is trying to establish neighborhood associations, and Neighborhood Watch should be a component of a neighborhood association. Our association has an email blast with over 900 subscribers to a Google Groups email system, which informs the residents of things that are happening in a very micro way, micro to our neighborhood. We have a Facebook page, we have a Twitter account, and so we advocate for many more things other than public safety, which is very important. We have started a neighborhood, the largest neighborhood traffic calming initiative, which has currently been very successful. We did our West Hollywood West overlay design, which was very successful in establishing better designed houses. We've opposed the Robertson closure because it impeded the mobility of our residents. So we do all these things that make for a better neighborhood. And our mission is to protect the integrity and quality of life in West Hollywood West. And that's what the city should be focused on, getting these groups to become an association. And you can have it all doing that. So I suggest that we look at it that way. I'm going to take my hat off as the vice president of WeHo West and speak as an individual resident. And I just want to thank Commissioner Balbone for her brilliance. The city of West Hollywood is lucky to have you on this commission. And Commissioner Hallman, regarding your comments earlier, you say that you hear from residents that they feel unsafe, but you voted to defund the police. But you're not a defund person. This is nonsensical. So I would suggest that you figure out a better backpedal method moving forward.
Thank you, Manny. Staff, I couldn't see the timer on that. Can you, when you can next time. Do we have any more public comments on this item? SoCal Vic. Go ahead, Victor Omachenko.
Sorry, I didn't change my thing. So Chair, we are discussing the neighborhood watch re-envisioning. Is that the item we are? Okay, yes. Well, thank you. As a longtime resident, I just wanted to say that I remember being able to bicycle to 14 different neighborhood watch groups on National Night Out, the first Tuesday in August. Years ago, the last one, because it was they lasted longer, was the Hollywood, the North of Sunset Boulevard group run by, currently by Elise Eisenberg. And I think that the staff report would have been helped a lot for us if you had had an addendum that listed who the neighborhood watch groups are and who those captains are and who maybe the co-captains are. Because as the years went on, what I saw was the number dwindled. And yes, we've had a pandemic for 2 years. However, that number, a height of 14 or 15, had been reduced quite a bit. So you wonder about, accountability. Who was asking, where are all these neighborhood watch groups back in those years? I did, but you never found out much except for the party that was held when the streets were closed off and we got to meet the sheriff. That was good. Reimagining this, I think it's wonderful that you're looking at this. Welcome, Jessica Anukam, to the city. You heard from Rick Watts on Sweetser about that vacant property that almost caught on fire. Well, I would think that a reformulated neighborhood watch program, sort of on the lines of what Mr. Rodriguez had mentioned, and it would be wonderful to have more details on how groups like that would form an association. Are we talking about a nonprofit like West Hollywood West Residents Association is? So there's a lot of ways we could expand it beyond the first Tuesday in August party with the pizza pies that the local neighborhoods gave. There were a lot more of them in years past. They seem to have been active. They fell into a state of disarray, but the fact that the city council is looking at reimagining this and the fact that we have a new staffer looking at this, I think it will redound to the entire community if this concept, besides just, I want the pizza pie in August, that's what it devolved to, that it expands. It focuses on the public safety, but the definition is expanded. For instance, a neighborhood group that reports vacant properties before Rick Watts has to come and ask you to look into it. So I just throw that out, some ideas about this reimagining. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor Omachenko. Dimitri Kermani.
Thank you, Chair. And I want to thank Manny for his presentation. It was wonderful. I apologize. I didn't know your last name, so I'm not calling you by your last name. Nevertheless, I wanted to propose the idea of maybe having these neighborhood watch captains collaborate with the volunteer program at the sheriff department, because as Commissioner Oliver had mentioned, the volunteers are actual civilians. They're not sworn officers. They're not sworn deputies in any way. And if we can have our neighborhood watch captains or even members of the various neighborhood watch groups collaborating with the volunteer department at the sheriff at LASD, it will allow for a quicker response, more open communication. The information from the neighborhood watch programs will be relayed to the Public Safety Commission at a much quicker and more efficient, manner. And at the same time, if there's any issue related to code enforcement or fire, the sheriff department volunteer program would be able to escalate the matter and get it to the right people. So I love the idea of bringing back neighborhood watch, block to block. All these ideas are absolutely fantastic, but finding some liaison between the city itself and the public, I think, would be tremendously beneficial for everybody.
Thank you, Dimitri.
Thank you.
Do we have any more public comments on this item? Okay, Commissioner Roman, do you want to kick it off on this neighborhood watch program?
Yeah, no, great idea. Good evening, everybody. So, yeah, I love the idea of Neighborhood Watch. I love the idea of using social media to kind of bring everybody together, to almost kind of like have like our own little app for West Hollywood so that people can report stuff. And if and when we do get a city-led police department, our police officers could be trained to monitor those apps so things can be caught in real time and be addressed in real time as they're happening. So just kind of like bringing the neighborhood watch to 2022 and relying on technology to help, get the word out and kind of keep everybody connected. So great idea for Neighborhood Watch. I hope we could move forward with it.
Okay, do we have some more? I have a whole bunch of them. Anybody else have comments, ideas on this program? I'll start then. Commissioner Oliver, go ahead.
Sure. I just I like what Dimitri said. I think that kind of bridging that divide between the community and the sheriff's department by us in the community, especially in leadership roles on the commission, whether it's Neighborhood Watch, getting involved, really seeing the day-to-day. And then also, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name of the app, but there is an app that was mentioned on Saturday, and if anyone knows the name of it, but it's unlike the two other community apps. On Saturday, I went to the Ogden Owls and Orange Grove Neighborhood Watch meeting, and they were talking about this app. It's actually populated by law enforcement, so you're not getting any sort of misinformation or any sort of untrue news. But I think bridging that divide is really important. So I think that's a really good component. And that's also a way for the sheriff's department to market the volunteer program out in the community better.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Oliver. To give you guys a little bit of a background, I was on the subcommittee for Neighborhood Watch years ago. And it was, we had a previous person with staff that ran that. And we asked all kinds of questions about participation, attrition, how many people stay within the organizations with the Neighborhood Watch. And we came up with, and we met with all of the Neighborhood Watch groups and everything. And the thing was, it was tricky. She says, basically, the only time they get activated again is when there's some kind of an event or something pressing in their actual neighborhoods. So I think that that's going to be something that we're going to really want to tap into. And I know the Ogden Owls, Mike Carter and that group, they've come up with some really organic, creative ideas. Manny, your group, you guys have come up with things that have worked. I think maybe Jessica, you were there when you had the meeting with everybody so they could collaborate with and bring their ideas together and everything. Personally, I think that that's really kind of the way to go, because they're going to want to buy in, and it should be something that adds value to them too, not just the public safety. So there's many things. We had the elderly kinds of items that have come up. I've spoken with the senior advisory board, and they would love to see that kind of more interaction. And there was one of the groups that I liked on staff, your report, called naming it Neighbors Together. I liked that idea pretty good. So it's a little bit more encompassing, and so, but I have a ton of ideas with the CERT, the resiliency, making our neighborhoods more resilient, the building like we did in my building, where we have the fire department come and educate and train everybody, show them where the shutoff valves are. In our building, we had that fire. We did have a fire, and the neighbors all came up with a buddy system. So because we experienced it, where a lot of neighbors didn't hear us yelling fire, and it was catching our whole building on fire. And we had spontaneous volunteers with the CERT program, maybe getting businesses involved that want to give supplies. There are businesses that have supplied some of these neighborhood meetings. Livability issues, planting parkways. The parkways, a lot of neighbors in those neighborhood watch groups have come up with, hey, can we do something kind of in our neighborhood specific to our little group here, and put some certain kind of plants or decorations, or, you know, these are just kind of like a lot of ideas how to communicate. I think it was you, Commissioner Oliver, mentioned that app. I've gone on some disasters with the Red Cross, and one of the teams came up with their own way to communicate. It was really, really good. They used a specific app, you know, so they can communicate, walking their dogs. So I just wanted to throw just kind of a few of those things out. I kind of think that maybe I kind of would like to suggest that this continues. Our neighbors and their groups need buy-in if we're going to alter anything. And I think that that's going to come organically from them. And I'm thinking that personally, I think that this one meeting won't be enough. I think that we may need to continue to nurture, and it may take a while to meet and discuss and have the neighbors themselves come up with things too. So I just want to throw that out to y'all and see if anybody else has any comments. Commissioner Hallman.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with you. I actually, being the WeHo East Neighborhood Watch Captain since 2015, and then having, for the most part, 2 dormant years because of COVID, we did our best to stay in touch as captains, meeting monthly and trying to stay abreast of what was going on. This could be the perfect time, as we are hopefully coming out of this pandemic, to reimagine Neighborhood Watch and see how groups can be more effective within their own neighborhoods. So I do think that maybe we should take our time with this issue, as you just mentioned, and go through all the different variables and options that, should be presented.
Yeah, and there's, our neighbors, we live in a very busy, our residents are, most of them that I know are really super busy. And so they might not be able to meet in person all the time. So we might be able to use Zoom or something so we can meet more often. It's just some ideas, but I may want to suggest that we maybe even do a subcommittee to continue this or something. But Commissioner Balbone.
So I actually, I don't know a lot about Neighborhood Watch. I know that I could benefit from some knowledge. My experience with Neighborhood Watch has been actually attending National Night Out and speaking to people about the connections that they have in their communities. And one of the things that I'd like to ask Commissioner Holman about is, we've got a mix. We've got homeowners, we've got renters, we've got people who are here part-time. I'd love to understand how you cater to all of those people, because I think there are a lot of people who want to get involved and they don't know how, and National Night Out comes and it's a nice night to get together with neighbors. But I'd love to learn some of what you've tried, what hasn't worked. And I know that we had other captains on the line, but I know that you are as a commissioner, you're our only, I believe, neighborhood watch captain. And I'd love to learn from you what you've tried, what works, because I have had a lovely experience at the neighborhood watch in your community, and people really came out and showed up. And what you put together there with different tables and services, I thought was very informative for people. But I'd love to know what's worked, what hasn't worked. How do you get everybody pulled together?
Yes, good point.
Chair, would you like for me to respond now?
Yeah, why not? We're on this discussion. This should be a good time too.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Belbon. It's a lot of work. It really is a lot of work. And as I explained to Co-Chair Roche when she attended one of our meetings, when she was looking to start a watch group, watch groups typically start for one of two reasons, or become more active if there's already an existing group. There is an uptick in crime that has the neighborhood very concerned, or it could be a development project that residents are very concerned about and the impact on its neighborhood. Ours became more active again in 2015 when we really started to see an uptick in transient malevolent activity on the east side that was really impacting residents and quality of life. I've lived on the east side for over 30 years and I'd never experienced anything like that. It was quite alarming. We became very active at our meetings. We would draw anywhere from 50 to 65 residents. Again, coming out because there was concern. Thank you. We worked very hard on our national night out, and it is the one opportunity to bring the East Side together, hopefully for more public safety awareness. Like at our last year's event, I said to Kristen Cook, I said, hey, fire department always comes. They always have a great time. We're happy to see them. How about if they do a demonstration? Fire safety demonstration. She loved the idea. The fire captain loved the idea. And they did it. It was directed more toward youth to, get them involved in thinking. And I thought that was very important to add to the evening, as well as some of our firemen singing YMCA to karaoke, because they need to let off some steam as well. We do have a WeHo East Watch meeting coming up on April 27th in Plummer Park at the Community Center. It will be our first public meeting in over 2 years. And I think it is important to get residents out to hear what they have to say. And believe me, like with our commission, we don't always agree at our watch meetings, but it's important for everyone that is a resident, I think, to have an active say and participate within their community. Can things be improved? Yes, always. We do have our own WeHo East website. We have a Facebook page. We've discussed having a Twitter page. I don't know if we're there yet with needing a Twitter page when we have a very active Facebook page, but social media is a very important tool for us to connect with the community. We do blast, we just had the Los Angeles Marathon. We always send out an LA Marathon blast via email. Hey, the LA Marathon is this weekend. These are the streets that will be closed off and not accessible because, most residents, people are busy. You're not always thinking about things like that. So we just like to stay one step ahead and keep our members, engaged in other things that are going on within the city besides public safety. And I'm hoping to do a fire training now that you are able to meet together. So I hope that helps you understand at least what we're doing. And I know the Ogden Owls do a great job. I was at that meeting as well with Commissioner Oliver, Mike Carter's a great leader and he's expanded his group. He has some new co-captains, so I'm excited for them.
Yeah, and he's done some things like you did where they have different people designated for certain things. Like Todd, I think you have somebody designated for media or whatever. They have done that as well. I see Jessica writing these all down. I hope we log every single thing and we keep a log of this, because when we have new neighborhood watch groups come up in the future, we'll have access to all of this data of things that work. So Commissioner Oliver.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to, I was blanking on the name of that website. It's called Nixle, Nixle. And our Sheriff's Department does post to it. But it would be great if we can, if there is if the resources exist to do so, maybe it's volunteers, but to populate that. So our, even the neighborhood watch captains, because people are going to go to them to say, hey, what's going on in the neighborhood? What's that? What are those 10 fire trucks doing? What's that helicopter for? And I think that would be great to get that information straight from LASD or from the fire department.
Thank you, Commissioner Oliver. And there's other things that we could look at. When you do see an event that does pop up somewhere, we can see that as an opening. Like, for example, I think Council Member Horvath may have had a fire near her apartment or was in her apartment. Okay, boom, right immediately, everybody's very interested. They sure were in my building. And afterwards, we recorded the fire department. They came and they spoke with everybody. And then I made a map of where all of our fire extinguishers were. And every time we have a new resident move in, then we give them that same map, because we didn't know where they all were at that moment in time. You can have little welcoming parties or whatever to a new neighbor that moves in. All of these kinds of things, I think it could be really fun and very valuable if we do something. I like the name Neighbors Together. Somebody else came up with that, staff did, I think. Commissioner Roche.
Thank you,
Vice
Chair.
Chair Roche.
It's okay. A couple things. I just want to commend Commissioner Hallman for the incredible work he's done. Also, I want to also state that, again, like I said earlier, one size doesn't fit all, right? One shoe size doesn't fit all. So even though we've heard earlier in our public comments regarding, establishing associations that might work for one section of the city, it may not work for all areas of the city. So I want to encourage our community members to explore both a neighborhood watch model, as Commissioner Hallman is actively doing with his with his teammates, so to speak, and as well as those who have effectively and successfully put together an association. I think there are different needs, and therefore there are going to be different models, and I encourage different models, and I encourage everyone to even explore maybe new models that might work more effectively for their needs for that specific district. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, what kind of output do we want with this item? Do we want to make a recommendation to City Council? Do we want to select a subcommittee, or maybe not a subcommittee?
Chair, if I may, again, this is just the very, very beginning of this conversation. And later on in our agenda, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, which will include a focus group for the Public Safety Commission. Neighborhood Watch will be part of that. So I'd recommend let's take this one step at a time. We don't need a formal recommendation from you all tonight. And later on your work plan, I'll be talking more about what's coming next for kind of your next holistic public safety discussion.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we're good with that, everybody. Let's move on to the next item. So our next item is item 9B, cameras in the public right-of-way.
Thank you, Chair. So just as some background, right before the pandemic hit, our innovation staff sent a council item back to City Council in the fall of 2019, just with regard to an update on the pilot camera program they had at intersections, which was more of like a standard surveillance type camera program. So we've included some of that information for you in your packet this evening. The city currently has an ALPR camera system at Santa Monica Boulevard and La Brea. That's an automated license plate reader system that is not like a traditional surveillance camera. It reads license plates. Currently, the city funded the cameras, bought the cameras, placed them, and the county manages the data, stores the data, and only the county has access to the data, and it's only for official law enforcement use. It's so the Detective Bureau at West Hollywood Station, for example, can access that system. So the City Council, again, right as the pandemic was hitting, had asked staff to estimate adding some additional intersections with ALPR camera systems in the spring of 2020. When COVID hit and the revenues dipped significantly for the city, all new projects were put on hold. So at this point, we are starting the budget process as staff to give estimates on current and future projects to the city manager, which will then go into the council's regular budget process, which is about to kick off, which starts with a council budget subcommittee meeting. So staff has priced intersections for future ALPR camera for consideration. So just so you all are aware, they're about 150 to 200,000 based on the size of the intersection. It depends on the size of the intersection, why it gets a little bit more expensive. And we will be pricing that out for the city manager for him to take forward to the city council. Again, back in 2020, West Hollywood Sheriff Station estimated where future intersections may be helpful to them as suspects are known to enter and leave the city quickly. And so at the time, and again, if funding is approved, we would go back and look at these intersections again. They were looking at La Cienega and Santa Monica, possibly San Vicente and Santa Monica, even though Sunset's not listed in your report. Sunset, is considered, but again, the money is not endless. So you can do the math, at 150 to 200,000 a piece. I don't envision 5 to 10 intersections being authorized right away. I would think it would be a couple for consideration at this point. So for tonight, we're not looking for a dollar amount from you all or for which intersection you like best. We're not at that point yet, but just to get your feelings on if ALPR cameras as directed by the city council is something that you'd identify as a funding priority, kind of like as a simple yes or no. And then again, if you would like the city to consider more traditional surveillance cameras, I don't know that that's going to make it in this fiscal year's discussion, but we can include those comments back to the city council that would be something that you would prioritize or you would not prioritize. So that's what we're looking for tonight.
Staff, didn't council already approve the ALPR cameras?
They asked staff to bring back the recommendation. So we are doing that. Like you could say tonight, you are 100% ALPR cameras, and I will include those comments along with the pricing that we've been asked to give to city council. Or you could say we support ALPR cameras and we think they're useful, and we would include that. So for tonight, I'm just really looking for your feedback on if it's a priority for the commission or not. Since it's already council directed to look into it, the estimates have already been received, and we'll be placing those into our staff budget process for the city manager. So it is going forward to the council for their consideration, but they have not voted on that yet. That will happen during the budget process.
Okay, thank you. There were 3 cameras types that were listed on the staff report: the sidewalk cameras and I think the businesses. Commissioners, it seems to me like we talked about the ALPRs. Is everybody in consensus on those? Should we move on, or do you want to make your comments on the ALPRs? They're just a license plate reader camera. Okay, we have some commissioners ready to comment on that. Let's just go with the ALPRs first. So let's just start discussing that then. Vice Chair Roche.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Kristen. You said some of those things really fast, so I just want to reiterate or verify, I guess, make sure I understand what you stated. So this is city funded. So West Hollywood bought the campus. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. I know this might be redundant, but I just need to make sure I understand the difference.
No, I appreciate the clarity. Thank you.
Yeah. So then the county, when you say the county manages the data, that's Los Angeles County.
Yes, the Sheriff's Department specifically.
Okay, so the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department manages the data.
The license plate data, yes.
Oversees it.
Yes.
Who else has access to it?
For ALPR, only the sheriff's station. City staff does not have access to it.
Okay, so briefly, maybe I'm just out of the loop here, but all their purpose is to run license plates. Their only purpose.
Yeah, so like for an example, a detective may speak to a victim of a crime who say, I saw a red Toyota Corolla and the first three numbers were 123. And the detective would then punch that number into the system, and then those cameras would be alerted to any type of partial plate hit matching, the description of the vehicle that the witness had given on a crime.
To the best of your knowledge, do you know if any of this data can be manipulated internally?
I'm not a technical expert, so I would
am I.
There's somebody out there who could do something, but I believe ALPR is very straightforward in my opinion.
Okay, I'm not familiar with the program, so I just thought I'd ask. Would LAPD have access to it, or only LASD?
As law enforcement agencies share suspect information, I would imagine that it would be
all law
shared
enforcement
in the appropriate ways that law enforcement does share information on suspects.
Okay, sounds good. Chair, am I allowed to ask a question regarding priority of intersections, or is that is that the next round?
Staff, you weren't looking for that right now, were you?
No, because it's a little bit cart before the horse.
Okay.
Because council needs to consider whether or not they want to fund an additional intersection or intersections.
Okay.
And then at that point, we would really want to go back to our crime analyst and detective bureau, since it's been 2 years since they looked at their data. And if there is a choice to be made, we could come back to the Public Safety Commission at that point. But kind of earmarking that funding is really the next step.
Would this be an appropriate time to add an additional intersection, or would that be earmarked for the next meeting?
You absolutely can say it tonight, and again, I will say, just not knowing what funding amount it is, if we had $1 million, we'd ask you for 5 priorities. If we're doing 1 intersection, we'd ask you for your top. We're just not there yet. We don't know. But certainly you can mention anything tonight and I'll take a note of it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kristen. Yeah, I would like to also consider the Sunset and Holloway intersection.
Yes. Yes. We all got that email too.
But also, with that said, I know that we're only talking about ALPR at this moment, but I do want to have it on record, my concern about having high-tech surveillance within the hands of LASD. So when we get to that conversation, I will speak to it. But I want to make sure that we just keep that in mind as we have this conversation about cameras, because it does create an entry point to a larger conversation regarding high-tech surveillance in the hands of our police department. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I think we might hit that on the next one when we talk about sidewalk cameras. Commissioner Roman?
Hi. Yeah, I hear you, Commissioner O'Shea. Those cameras in the wrong hands could be very dangerous. But that being said, I have a shop on the corner of La Cienega and Santa Monica. Literally, the police come into our store twice a week to ask us to download footage for them for somebody that may have driven by or a crime that occurred nearby. So I am for, as we think about our city in the future, and we have our own police department, and we have high-tech neighborhood watch communities, we also need to have high-tech surveillance. These surveillance cameras can detect people entering our city, maybe speeding into the city. Maybe there's a 5150 that enters the city, where we could dispatch and help that person before it escalates. So if a crime does occur, we should be able to roll back the tape and look at the suspects, look at stuff happening in almost real time. If you see what happened to Mayor Meister's sister when she got hit by the scooter, like that camera just caught it perfectly. Like we're all able to see exactly what happened there. And so as long as the surveillance cameras are not being used to target people that could be innocent, I think that as a futuristic city, when we're looking to reduce our costs and maybe reduce the number of police officers we need to rely on, you could use a high-tech camera system to kind of offset those other costs. So I am pro cameras everywhere.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Roman. Before we go on to this, let's finish this ALPR. This is just the automatic license plate reader camera. Do you other commissioners have a discussion on that now? Okay, Commissioner Balbon.
I just wanted to ask the question, one of the things that our most recent conversation has brought to mind is, what's the return on investment? How is this funding going to support safety? And I know enough that we've caught some people who were committing crimes through this, but I would like to just understand the frequency of that, the data around that as part of what gets pulled into this recommendation, because it sounds very good. And I think there's general support for it, but in order to get the cameras, if we want them in multiple locations, it would just be good to understand those components. And, I've heard different cases, different things that they've triggered, but I don't think I've seen a comprehensive report of how they've really helped us with safety. And that would help me to know, okay, do I think 3? Do I think 4? How many? I don't know. It would be helpful to understand how specifically they've been helping, because I know they have, but it's general.
Staff, do you have an answer for that?
No, I mean, not tonight, but we can get that for you. Anecdotally, they get hits, some lead to arrests or more information or identifying additional witnesses or victims. But I can take a look at that with Acting Captain Mulder and see if we can, X number of license plates scanned, how we'll figure out some sort of metric for you all to look at.
Thank you. Even some of the high profile situations where they've been used would be good too. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, and we did have a discussion previously about these, and it was really good because some of the officers were here and they explained how much they helped and how many minutes they could save and everything, a lot of detail. So that might be something Captain Mulder might want to, he may even want to bring some of those guys in as well. Commissioner Oliver.
Thank you. I had a question. Generally, do we know roughly, and I'm not looking for exact numbers, but just roughly the amount of detective or officer time spent going door to door, asking for footage after a crime? Because in terms of the the investment, I support it, but I think it would be good to compare those two numbers. And then I also, I feel like in the business district, we don't have an expectation to privacy. We're constantly on some sort of surveillance system, whether it's a private home or businesses, cameras. We're all carrying, 2 or 4 cameras and a microphone and a GPS tracker at all times. And I think that this technology, the benefits, in my opinion, outweigh the potential privacy concerns in the business districts, in the commercial districts. And I also think that the amount of resources right now that are devoted to running license plates or looking for stolen cars or trying to roll private security back would be saved by using technology like this. So I fully support the ALPR cameras. And thank you, Vice Chair Roche, for mentioning that intersection at Sunset and Holloway, because I know there have been a lot of concerns there, safety concerns, not just crime, but people driving in an unsafe way. And I'd like to see them at as many intersections, at as many entrances to the city as possible. So I support as much funding as we can get for these cameras. I'm sorry, for the ALPR cameras.
Okay. The rest of you commissioners have questions on the automatic license plate reader cameras? Comments on that still? Okay.
I had a comment.
Commissioner, okay, Commissioner Soon-Shiong.
Thank you. I had a comment around the fact that this is around $800,000. I know these numbers are not precise, but specifically to the LA County Sheriff's Department Advanced Surveillance and Protection Unit. And so all of this data wouldn't be managed by the county, but LA Sheriff's Department. And so in addition to the number of arrests, given that we have had a fair amount of these cameras before, I'm interested in the number of false arrests. Also, I'm interested in what it would cost not only to install, which in a preliminary number is $800,000 for 4 new installations, but also what the cost would be to maintain those cameras over time historically. I also would like an explanation of why this is a cost incurred by the city itself and potentially a cost that could be incurred from the Sheriff's Department, which does have a technology budget within itself.
Staff, is that in, I think that was in the report, wasn't it? That's county. Maybe you can mention about this.
So there is some background in the report. And again, we should try not to get too much in the weeds tonight, because again, the council has to decide that this is a funding allocation that they want to make. So that's the first step we need to take. Our initial outlay for La Brea Santa Monica was $165,000. And we've spent, I want to say this, the date's probably in the report, but whenever we put those cameras up, they are still up. We have not had to replace them yet. We are looking at possibly replacing them with better cameras through this budget cycle. But they're more resilient than I thought they would be, to be honest. You kind of put them up there and off they go. So it's a minimal expense for the city. With regard to the county doing all this, I firmly believe this is a city decision, not a county decision on whether or not the city would like ALPR cameras at their intersections. So that's why, it's a city expense to decide to put these cameras up, to allow the Sheriff's Department to monitor them. So that I firmly believe the city needs to say yes, not the county.
Yeah, regarding the costs, I think I remember reading in the report, the county for the data costs, didn't they saddle that?
For now, the county has saddled all of those costs. And again, we're not talking about the sidewalk cameras, surveillance cameras right now, but if the city were to put those cameras up, the city would also have to fund the data storage, management, public records requests for all those cameras as well. Not to say that the city couldn't do that, but that's a much bigger undertaking. When we met with the city of Beverly Hills at the council's request to look at their camera system, they have an outlay of multiple millions of dollars for those cameras. and their ongoing storage costs are just under $500,000 a year. So while their camera system is pervasive and everywhere, and they even added more during the pandemic, the data storage and retrieval program is an enormous in-house City Hall function with staff assigned and a rather large budget to manage that data.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Roman, is your hand still up? Commissioner Roman?
No, sorry, I'm putting it down.
Okay, I think we have Vice Chair Roche.
Thank you, Chair. So a couple things this now just made me think of one other question. So when we say funding, we will be funding LASD to put this is a program out of LASD. So therefore the monies we are paying are going into LASD. I just want to make sure that's clear.
Not quite. So
okay,
the
explain.
city paid for La Brea, assuming we use the same vendor. The vendor at the time was a company called Vigilant. So there's other camera systems out there. So we don't want to price all that. The city bought the actual cameras from the vendor and placed those cameras up. And then the sheriff's department linked those cameras with their ASAP unit.
Okay. Got it. So they are not receiving funding. LASD won't be receiving funding to manage and oversee this data.
At this time, the county does not charge its contract cities with ALPR cameras for that data retrieval and storage. Not to say that couldn't change in the future, but
understood.
At this point, our only expenditure has been for the cameras themselves, and we did have to replace. We had to have one fixed at one point. It was, a quick bucket trip day to reposition a camera, but that is the only outlay, and that cost also went to the camera vendor, not the sheriff's department.
And in terms of Beverly Hills, Kristen, sorry, one more question. In terms of Beverly Hills, because they do have their own city-led department, they do manage and oversee all of that internally.
That's correct. In addition to their straightforward surveillance cameras,
right. But all of that is managed and overseen internally within the city.
And their initial,
not the county.
That's correct. And their estimates are in the millions of dollars. It's a camera system they've built over more than a decade, and their ongoing storage costs are just under $500,000 a year.
Got it. Okay, great. I think that's it. Thank you so much.
And they have 16 ALPR cameras from what I understand. Commissioner Oliver, do you have one more on the ALPRs?
Yes. Just on the funding side of it, I agree that it's a city decision, but I also think that that it's predominantly also a benefit. There's definitely a benefit to the county overall, for the department, being able to put a license plate in the system, perhaps a stolen plate from another city. But I think ultimately this benefits our city the most. And it's an initial investment, but we do benefit from that economy of scale. So we're not spending the $500,000 a year to manage it. We don't have to have dedicated West Hollywood data managers. We can benefit. So I do think it's a worthwhile expenditure and something that makes sense for our city to fund.
Thank you, Commissioner Oliver. I agree. I like the idea, but it's a moot point probably because City Council's already decided on this, I think. Adam Darvish, do you want to speak just on the automatic license plate reader cameras, or do you want to wait until we go through sidewalk cameras and others?
No, I wanted just to make a quick comment about residential streets. I brought it up several times at City Council. I'm not sure this is the appropriate time, but just that should be in the conversation. I told you all that in my accident, there was no recording on the street to show that the driver basically went, the car went airborne and landed on my driveway and into my property. And I had the cameras, and I had LA Sheriff. One time there was a chase in our neighborhood. They actually were ringing my doorbell at 2 in the morning to see if I captured anything on my camera, which is just being in the city in 2022. I think we need to really invest in technology. And I see that we invest a lot of money in our park, at the library, it's millions to build a swimming pool. We need to really think about technology for safety for our residents too. So that's all I needed to add. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adam Darvish. Let's go with the next public comment then. Victor Omolchenko.
I want to thank Commissioner Roche for bringing up a term that I've been using now on other meetings, and it's called speaking your truth, not being mealy-mouthed or namby-pamby. I can't tell you how much I enjoy hearing you ask accountability questions, all of you, looking at this, looking at what things cost. Looking back at the 2019 report, it said, the one that's the attachment, it said that these cameras at the major intersections were not that hotsy-totsy in producing results that would catch the majority of crimes back then, which were these vehicular burglaries or robberies. So having looked over the report, I may have missed it. What are the results of the camera that is already in place, this APLR, at Santa Monica and La Brea? Maybe I missed it because I had to run away for a bit, but I would love to hear the results of that investment. What have we found and how have we used it? And just speaking my truth, I mean, I've been around a while, and all this talk about high-tech surveillance and cameras watching and all of this stuff going on. As a boy, I read 1984 by George Orwell, and then 1984 passed, and I just feel like, I don't know, maybe at the intersections, okay, I'm happy you're looking at these costs of $200,000 per camera. It seems like a fait accompli by the city council. You're kind of being brought into it now to, I guess, make us all feel good. So I'm happy that you're asking the questions about what the cost is going to be. And I just, maybe with the intersections, okay, love to hear the results from Santa Monica and La Brea. And before we get to putting cameras along the sidewalks, that could be danger, heartbreak, dead ahead, 1984 Orwellian society. We are here, and I hope to not live to see that day. Thank you so much, and thanks for working on behalf of public safety.
Thank you, Victor Omolchenko. I think that's a perfect segue into the sidewalk cameras. Staff, do you have enough from us for the ALPR cameras?
Absolutely. And again, the other types of cameras are just for your reference only at this point. So that's not really something we need to get into too deeply tonight, because those aren't funding recommendations that we're taking forward as staff at this moment. Those reports, and I know a lot of you weren't commissioners in 2019, but this conversation has been going on for a couple of years now for cameras. And, the public speaker is correct. When the City Innovations Group did do cameras at those intersections, regular cameras, not ALPR cameras, they found that they weren't particularly as useful. So that's why that staff report in 2019 recommended not pursuing those type of surveillance cameras at that time and possibly considering ALPR additional intersections. Then the pandemic hit, and now here we are, fast forwarded 2 years later. So if you all have, like very brief comments tonight about your feelings about, surveillance cameras, but again, at this point, staff is not submitting funding estimates to the city manager for traditional surveillance cameras at this time.
Okay, good, because some of this has already come out with the commissioners. Let's continue on for a little bit on this. Keep it brief, I guess now. Commissioner Balbone.
So I think we're going to need to really weigh the technology, understand what it provides. And then I also think that we have to talk about placement and vulnerabilities. And I know that Vice Chair Roche sent around an article about that. You know, one of the areas that I worry about is we now have this beautiful new park, and this beautiful new park is right next to one of the bars that we know people go to. They get intoxicated, could walk into the park, pass out. There are areas of the city that I think we have some vulnerabilities that cameras might help. But I think we have to really talk about it robustly. And to me, I just think we'd have to have some common thinking between the city council, the residents, on locations that make sense, and also kind of what the downside risks are of some of this. But one of the spots I worry about is some of our parks where after hours, we might have some vulnerability for our residents. So that's just my thinking.
Commissioner Roche. Vice Chair Roche.
We're good. I really appreciate the concerns around high-tech surveillance from our constituents. And I just want to note that I believe the reason why this is even on our agenda is due to the council recognizing that there is a implicit racial bias that has continued, historic implicit racial bias that continues to happen within our law enforcement. And this is just one alternative to hopefully really meeting our needs and kind of removing that issue. I don't know if it is successful because we still need to look at the data based on the La Brea and Santa Monica intersection. But in case we're wondering why we're having this conversation, I believe it ties back to that as an alternative. So just keep that in mind as we continue to have this, as this conversation unfolds. Thank you.
Commissioner Oliver.
Thank you. I guess I want to add a little nuance to what I said before. I was speaking entirely about the business districts, the commercial corridors. I'm not ready tonight at this point to voice support or recommend cameras on residential streets. I think that would present, I'm willing to discuss it, but I'm concerned that presents a privacy issue, monitoring the comings and goings of people's private homes, both for their private lives and also political organizing. I think we should discuss that further, but when it comes to the commercial corridors, the business districts, I support cameras in those areas, and that the ingress and egress, I guess, of neighborhoods, just not in the neighborhoods at this point.
Thank you. Commissioner Soon-Shiong.
I want to thank Commissioner Roche, also the public speaker, for uplifting the need for real controls around how the data is shared, and also the fears, which are very legitimate, around the link between surveillance and inherent racial bias. I think there's a large body of research that indicates that additional technologies does not solve racial bias in policing or law enforcement, particularly if that data is exclusively held and managed by the law enforcement departments themselves. And so for that reason, I do not support additional cameras in neighborhoods, and would like to put forward a recommendation, not tonight, but at a future time, for us as a group to really look into that issue in more detail.
Thank you, Commissioner Soon-Shiong. Originally, we had this come before our commission. We had a big event, and it was intense, where we didn't have cameras, and it was a guy named Kirk Doffing that got really hurt, and I was all for the cameras, and we voted. The commissioner unanimously, I think, voted for the cameras. Kristen was there at that time. And there was the reason why I voted no on this last our vote, and it was with Commissioner Soon-Shiong and Vice Chair Roche, was because I heard other people speaking about these privacy issues, and I knew there was some concern with, like Victor Omolchenko just brought up. So I just wanted to make sure that we did have a public discussion and have that come out, so they got a chance to talk about it. Having said that, the expectation of privacy, I tend to believe that when you're out on public sidewalks and everything, I think, you know, we've got cell phones. I think that's going to be there. That's just one thing just to think about. And the other one is the gangs have figured out how to do these smash and grabs, and they've got it down to a science. And some other things that they do, you know, the follow home things, it's really tough to catch them. It's like a 10-second, 15-second crime. And so that's just kind of what I wanted to say. I wanted those things to be brought up. And then the data collection costs, the maintenance, all of those kinds of things, I think is probably going to go to City Council by staff. And then the other one I wanted to talk about and just at least just mention is the idea of the businesses and having like sort of a rebate program. I know Commissioner Roman has used that quite a bit. That's another way, that's another possible alternative where you wouldn't have, the businesses would determine if they're going to give up the footage or not, or they would own it, I guess, themselves. So if anybody wants to weigh in on the businesses part, you can, or we can just move on. Okay, let's go move on. Staff, did you get enough from us at this point in time for that? Just kind of brief.
I did. Thank you very much. And as usual, your comments will be shared with the City Council members tomorrow. And then we'll also put some notes in the budget process to the city manager. So thank you for tonight. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Chair. Would it be all right if I added one more question?
Sure. I was just speaking to Carrie. Commissioner Balbone is actually, she lost her Wi-Fi, her connection. So she's not currently in the meeting, just FYI, in case you want her to hear what you have to say, Commissioner Oliver.
No, this is actually a good time to, because I just wanted to get an answer back, Kristen, if you could, if it's something to look into the possibility of paying for or receiving the data from Beverly Hills. If we're able to access the data from there, either licensed by cameras or cameras that face kind of the border of West Hollywood, since they do their own internal data management, that could be an additional way to add points of data for us. I don't know if there's already sharing of that.
As I mentioned earlier, law enforcement agencies share that information with each other, again, as appropriate. So like if West Hollywood detectives are looking for a certain license plate that goes well beyond the LA County system, that would include Beverly Hills Police as well.
And there's a system to share that.
Yes.
Okay, let's move on to the report from the fire department. Let's keep it brief. Is there anything unusual, Chief?
Yes, there's a few uptakes I'd like to talk about. So within the last 15 days, we've had 3 structure fires in West Hollywood. 2 of them were outdoors that extended into the building, and 1 was a cooking fire. So I just wanted you to, since it's been a topic and we know the density of the community of West Hollywood, and just seems like our fire activity has increased. And as we talked in the months past, about those outdoor fires that have the potential to extend into a building, we've seen the end result in that within the last 15 days on 2 of those fires that we actually did displace some people. Nobody was injured, which is thankful, but your quick action taken by your West Hollywood firefighters proved that it's a demanding job for them, and the fire frequency that they do get, or the potential to get. So that's why we come in full force. And I know it's been talked about and previously about how come so much equipment shows up to an emergency. That is the end result on why so much equipment shows up on an emergency. And so anyhow, is there any questions for me? If not, Megan has a few items she'd like to discuss, but I'd like to talk anything operationally if there's any questions on anything from the group.
Commissioner Balbon.
So thank you for your update. I missed part of it, but I did want to say that I was walking past the fire that happened on San Vicente and Melrose,
Mm-hmm.
and had a chance to talk to the team that was responding. First of all, the residents there, I thought they did a fantastic job, and they were there very quickly and handled the situation very well. So I just wanted to share that. One of the questions that I had that I'd never thought about until I was there is all of our restaurants have those heaters with propane tanks, and I'm sure there's spare propane tanks.
Mm-hmm.
Are there requirements around safe storage? How does that work? Because my understanding is for that particular fire, there were some explosions perhaps related to the propane tanks.
Correct. So on that fire, it started outdoors near and around some propane tanks. So yes, there is fire code placement on storage of propane tank, on how many they can have on site, where they can be combustibles when in the area, if they're locked up. So there is those fire code components in place. I can't say whether they were or were not in compliance with that, but yes, there is codes and ordinances in place for safe storage of flammables.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Commissioner Oliver.
Thank you. I just wanted to say just a few words of praise from kind of relayed from the community that we've had a few incidents recently, including Councilmember Horvath's place of residence. And the word on the street, the feedback from the community has been nothing but praise, and just saying what a great job Lake County Fire has done in West Hollywood. So thank you, and thanks to the station. I just also wanted to ask if I guess one question is, how often do we have to request services from other cities, from Beverly Hills or LA City? And then the other is, do we have enough resources for fire in the city of West Hollywood?
So the answer is yes, yes, and yes. And I'll give a quick rundown it. So your fire agencies have mutual aid agreements. And so the Los Angeles County Fire Department, the Los Angeles City Fire Department are the biggest pool of resources in Southern California. But where our borders touch with the city and county properties of the cities that have county fire protection that borders other fire agencies, we use a concept on the closest resource to respond to a fire. So we have like resources. So we can send LA City full complements of equipment, and LA City sends it to us. Beverly Hills, also we have an agreement with that we send resources to Beverly Hills, and they will offer us. And what that benefits your fire agencies, which is at no cost, if you will, is that resource sharing component, which is significant for major emergencies. And so it's very beneficial. So I'll give you an example. If we have a significant fire in West Hollywood, your Los Angeles County Fire Department is so big, we pull resources where we have 2 pieces of equipment or 3 pieces of equipment in other stations, and we bring them for move up coverage. We also will send that equipment to other cities that don't have the depth that us and LA City have, so we can share those resources, and that's on a mutual aid agreement. So your fire agencies are very tight, and we've been doing it for a significant amount of years with the resource sharing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the support and the kind words. I'll pass it on to the troops. Thank you so much.
Megan.
So I just wanted to mention that this past Saturday, I got the opportunity to go to the Ogden Orange Grove Neighborhood Watch meeting. And it was a really great meeting. I got to meet Commissioner Oliver, Commissioner Hallman in person, and Jessica Newcomb from Public Safety. So we had a really great discussion. We talked about CERT. We talked about some of our other public education programs. So I'm really looking forward to getting CERT back up and running and working with the various community groups moving forward.
And the neighborhood watch captain gave you good reviews, and we're very thankful that you came. So that was very much appreciated. Yeah, they really mentioned that. And Megan, one quick one. I had a resident ask about the CERT program. Where are we with that possibility?
We are able to schedule classes at this point. So I'm going to work with Jessica and work with public safety, and we're going to schedule something hopefully within the next couple months.
Okay. Moving on to block by block. Shay, just keep it brief unless you have something unusual or a request from us.
Sounds good. Good evening, commissioners, Chair Roman, excuse me, Vice Chair Roche and Chair Torrey, and city staff. So nothing really unusual. We have started to try out some new deployment strategies to see which ones will work more effectively. The jury is still out on that one though, but we are looking at different angles to approach that. Our company had introduced a hospitality initiative. Basically everything that has been going on as far as the pandemic and COVID and things of that nature, just trying to get reacclimated with the districts that we serve across the nation, and get back to the hospitality side of aspect of things that we do. Also, last month we received a few more calls in concern with mailbox thefts and transient sleeping in residential carports. So when I get those type of calls, what I do is try to narrow down the time that the reporting party is saying that these things are happening, double up on patrols in that time period to see if we can offset some of that activity. We've also had a small increase in the amounts of calls for safety escorts. Most of those safety escorts come at night, usually from a business or employee wanting maybe for us to escort them to their car because they don't feel safe doing so. But besides all of that, that's really been it for us.
Thank you. Commissioner Roman.
Hi, Shay. How's it going? I had a chance to speak to Larry today, Larry Block, and he loves you guys. We love you guys. Your guys pass by all the time to check in on us. They literally park their bikes out front, come in, talk to our front desk, ask them how everything's going. Larry said the same thing down the block, so we really love you guys. I wanted to ask, do you ever have to rely on, do you ever call into the our police department for help? Do your guys rely on them?
Yes, because it's only certain things that we can do, and once it becomes out of our purview, and then we definitely get the sheriffs involved. If we don't have to get them involved, then we don't. I know that they're very busy handling other things, but again, if it gets out of control for us, we definitely get them involved.
Got it. And how are they? Are they responsive? Do they come when you need them?
Yes. They come when we need them. We call into dispatch like everybody else. We get asked the same questions basically that everybody else. So we try to give the best description that we can, the location that we are, what happened in the incident, and stand by until the sheriff show up.
I wonder if there's a better way for you guys to communicate with them rather than just communicate like the rest of the public does. But maybe that's something we can explore. Also, from what I understand is that we've increased your budget.
I'm not aware of that just of yet.
So the direction on the budget is a recent council item was passed to add an additional $400,000 for extra security patrols. Staff was directed to put that request into the city manager's budget process that I described earlier, for, if approved by council, would have a July 1 start to that funding.
So as of July 1, they could potentially have $400,000 more dollars to add more block by block?
If council approves that, but the direction to staff was to include that funding for consideration in the budget process.
Great. Well, that's good to hear.
Did that include the kiosks? I know that passed as well.
So it's the same thing, Chair Berger. So the idea is to provide more presence, whether that's a footbeat, a kiosk, or whatever. Obviously, Shay will continue to work with the commission on, what those priorities feel best. But at this point, it's a pending dollar amount for consideration.
Thank you. Commissioner Roman, do you have more?
So no, that's great. And yeah, we look forward to that. And I think that in the meantime, Shay, if you can, and I know that you are, but just really keep a special focus on that new park. Commissioner Balbone expressed some interest about, there could be dangerous stuff going in there, from drug deals to robberies to overdoses. People are hanging out in that park after the bars and stuff like that. So if you guys could keep a special watch on that area. Also, just like along through Boys Town on Thursday, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, it's like our Times Square, and there's a lot going on in there. And we've begged the police to help us and to put foot patrols down there, but that's not happening. So we hope that we could rely on you guys to really, keep an eye out on that area.
Absolutely, we'll do our very best.
Thank you.
Also, I've been over to the park, WeHo Park, now several times myself, because I was very interested in what was going on and what the new design was going to look like. So I have kind of surveyed that land and see where we'll be able to help out once that's activated.
Thank you. Vice Chair Roche.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Shay.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hi.
This question is probably for both you and staff. Back in November, the commission made a motion to implement a marketing program to really help raise the level of awareness of your services. And I'm just curious, now that it's been, 5 months or so, what that looks like. Do we have any feedback? Do we feel like that's made an improvement? Do we need to make any adjustments to that marketing program? Just want to touch base.
Great question, and I'll give a brief update. So our communication staff and our social media expert, Jace in particular, has really helped us spread the word, and we're definitely getting more calls into City Hall. So that little bit of extra attention is helping. And I think that also correlates with the extra requests for security escorts that Shay's team is seeing. So we'll continue to work with the comm staff to make sure that the word continues to get out. But we're definitely seeing an uptick on questions, getting lots of calls in saying thank you. So it's made a difference, all those social posts.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
I've also been invited to quite a few neighborhood watch meetings, so I'll definitely do my very best to spread the message at each of those events.
Excellent. I know that our Commissioner Balbone mentioned in that meeting different examples or ways to highlight your services, such as utilizing billboards or maybe signage that is along Santa Monica Boulevard at the time, theater spaces that weren't being used on Santa Monica Boulevard. Kristen, are we still looking into amplifying these services, utilizing her recommendations or suggestions?
Short answer is always yes. So when communications looks at getting the word out for any issue, they especially look at the stuff that's easy, free, and quick, right?
Sure.
And so that does include the bus shelters that we have that come into rotation from time to time at no cost. Billboards, We're not seeing a lot of paper items be popular anymore. And we're actually, right before even the pandemic started, we were getting a lot of concerns about the environment from people like, why are you passing out these cards? Why is this? Why is that? So we're really focusing on the electronic modes the most. But our communications team is robust and clever, and a lot more clever than I am. So they think of all these little tricks to have that at WeHo City voice that catches people's attention with the important information we're trying to get out.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Hallman.
Thank you, Chair. Kristen, I don't know if this is a question for you or Shay or both, but obviously park safety is very important. And I know there have been questions about Plummer Park and now our new expanded WeHo Park. Who's actually in charge of park safety? Is that PAC West? And are they Plummer Park? Do they oversee West Hollywood Park as well? And if so, what are the hours of operation?
So I would say collectively we're in charge of park safety, you know, from recreation staff to sheriff to block by block to PAC West currently manages the contract that I believe you're referring to for the fixed post security. On the West Hollywood side, when the pool was open, they started as early as 5 a.m. Since, you know, the new building isn't open quite yet, they're starting closer to 8, and there's a presence in both parks until midnight. Those fixed post security guards also lock our pocket parks at dusk. They have about a quarter of the contingency of staff that block by block currently staffs in the city, but it currently is a separate contract.
Thank you.
Commissioner Balbone.
So one of the things that I think would be really helpful when we think about, particularly Shay, when you talked about the escorts that you give to people who may need to get home safely, is talking to some of our businesses through the chamber. And if we do any type of campaign, I know time to time they have some of our city posters or other posters in their businesses. You know, we've had a lot of residents come and tell us they feel unsafe walking around the city. And I think that your team is a good option for people who may go out to dinner and then just be all by themselves, worried, like, how am I going to walk home? I don't feel safe. I feel threatened. So there may be a way to work with the chamber on that, particularly if there is an expansion of your staff. But even before then, we may want to test that out as well, because it's a twofer, right? Get people back into our local businesses, but also help them to feel safe.
I agree. Sounds good.
Staff, can you write that down and maybe connect them with that suggestion?
Yes, and Shay attends chamber meetings with me from time to time. So Genevieve is, they know each other, but yes, I'll add that to like our tracking list that we're providing you guys every month.
Genevieve knows everybody.
Thank you. Vice Chair Roche. We can't hear you. You're
really quickly. Thank you. Kristen, so our PAC West contract, and I know we've talked about this a million times, so forgive me. What would you consider the main difference between our PAC West contract in terms of their services, in terms of protecting the parks, and BBB?
The PAC West contract, the biggest difference is it's about 10 fixed post security positions for city facilities. Okay. So when one comes to City Hall and, you know, had to make sure they were vaccinated to get in and check that they had an appointment, you know, we have a security guard that is in the lobby providing security for the building. But during the pandemic, they were enforcing the ordinances that the city council had put in place. So at Plummer Park, for example, they assist recreation staff with the lobby, monitoring who's coming in and out. And then they do some kind of foot patrols in Plummer Park, Farmers Market. On West Hollywood Park side, pre-pandemic, they're assisting with the pool because it's dark and 5 a.m. and they're escorting city staff from the 5-story parking structure to the pool, doing some fixed post work there, you know, where they stand in one place, but then also some foot patrols Believe it or not, our dog parks are quite the sight. We have people getting into verbal arguments with each other, and big dog doesn't belong in little dog spot. And so our security guards have been very active at the dog parks, for example. And then we're re-looking at all of that, city staff, recreation and facility staff in particular, about with everything coming back online, what do they need for July 1st? What is that going to look like? So we're going through an internal process right now to kind of examine that.
Are they certified or licensed or
Yes.
state? Like, okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the sheriff's report. Captain Mulder, if you can keep it brief, anything unusual?
And I believe Acting Captain Mulder was coming back in town. I know he's with us, but I believe Sergeant Mike Yost might start with the basics. But I
okay, welcome.
Yes, good evening.
Welcome.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. This is Sergeant Michael Yost. I'm filling in for Lieutenant Mulder this evening. For March 2022, Part 1 crime was up 93% with 222 incidents when compared to March 2021 with 115 incidents. Year to date for 2022, Part 1 crime is up almost 90% when compared to the same period in 2021. For context, March and April of 2020 recorded the lowest number of Part 1 crimes in the city's history. We usually average 180 to 220 Part 1 crime incidents monthly prior to 2020. For additional context, at the beginning of 2020, prior to the pandemic, we are almost 30% lower for Part 1 crimes when compared to the same time in 2019. The West Side, the numbers are up 162%. City Center was up 22%, and the East Side was up 65%. The Part 1 crime breakdown, West Side was 57%, City Center was 19%, and the East Side was 24%. Robberies were up for the month of March, including 4 armed street robberies targeting high-end watches. On March 25th, 2022, an attempted robbery occurred on the 1000 block of Larrabee Street in the city of West Hollywood. On March 28th, 2022, another attempted robbery occurred on the 8800 block of Ashcroft. In both crimes, a vehicle was used. West Hollywood deputies and detectives developed information regarding the suspect vehicle. LASD's Major Crimes Bureau assisted with the investigation, which led to the arrest of a suspect and the impound of the vehicle. There were 10 residential burglaries, which is high, and several may have been committed by the same suspect based on location and time. 2 arrests were made regarding these residential burglaries. Aggravated assaults were up 22, with 3 incidents with multiple victims, most of which were club fights, transient assaults, and road rage incidents. 7 arrests were made regarding these. Grand theft autos, there were 22, which is high. This included 3 motorcycles and 3 vans, which is unusual. We are still seeing mail thefts and catalytic converter thefts. Theft crimes continue to drive the numbers. There were 134 theft crimes, 60 grand theft, 28 vehicle burglaries, and 46 petty thefts. There were 28 vehicle burglaries this month. We are watching this and will continue special operations to address this issue. Detectives have solved 3 grand theft crimes in the month of March. Commissioner Roman, I had a question regarding the number of pickpocketing cases West Hollywood had and the status of these cases. There were a total of 44 pickpocketing crimes for the month of March. 26 of these were grand thefts. Of these, 2 arrests were made regarding the pickpockets. On Sunday, March 27th, 2022, there was an apartment fire at 1031 Harper Avenue. Los Angeles County Fire Department responded. The fire was accidentally started when cooking oil was used. West Hollywood Code Compliance and Building Safety responded and assisted occupants. Arson was notified but not responded due to it being an accidental. Deputies who responded to this incident were Yesenia Olivera, Brian Ceballos, Daniel Martinez, Eric Asanda, Raymond Rose, Gerson Vasquez, Lorena Foster, Byron Holloway, Greg Teixeira, Sergeant Joanna Warren, and Lieutenant Nick Gary. These sheriff's personnel were honored at the City Council meeting on Monday, April 4th, along with personnel from the LA County Fire Department. We continue to conduct saturation patrols and footbeater operations and other type of operations with our cops and entertainment policing teams. We have run recent crime suppression operations with our cops and entertainment policing teams. We have been focusing on the west side because of the large numbers of thefts in this area. Crime impact team operations. Thursday, March 3rd, West Side High Visibility Saturation Patrol and Vehicle Burglary Saturation was conducted. Additional patrol checks were conducted of West Hollywood Park. On Tuesday, March 15th, Cops and Entertainment Policing Team conducted a West Side Saturation Patrol and conducted saturation patrol of West Hollywood Park. One suspect was arrested for an outstanding felony warrant parole violation. Another suspect was arrested for an outstanding warrant for battery. An additional suspect was arrested for an outstanding warrant for driving a vehicle on driving a stolen vehicle. Another suspect was arrested for an outstanding warrant for drinking in public. And another suspect was arrested for possession of controlled substance.
Sergeant Yost?
Yes, sir.
I think we've got probably enough details. Is there anything more specific that you want to, that was kind of a standout before we go to questions with the commissioners?
I know the Commissioner Roman had one additional question regarding 911 calls for service. It was stated that there was a time delay regarding a recent incident and that there was multiple transfers throughout the 911 system. I personally looked into this situation and reviewed all the calls for service. There was one 911 call placed that arrived at West Hollywood Sheriff Station at 6:44 p.m. It was transferred to fire, who dispatched personnel, and they were on scene by 6:48 p.m. This is a total of 4 minutes from when the call originated at West Hollywood Sheriff Station to fire personnel arriving on scene. There was some issues regarding transfers. I personally called LAPD's communications and CHP's dispatch center, spoke with their supervisors, and they received no 911 calls. So the only 911 call that came through was to West Hollywood Sheriff Station. If you have any further questions on that, thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. And just in the future, I know you're new, and thank you for coming and putting all that work into that. This commission generally likes to spend most of their time on questions. So if you can see our previous videos about how Lieutenant Mulder did it as well. I know all of the information is important, but we have the reports in front of us as well as so does the public. So just keep that in mind if you're going to be our guy in the future. And let's start moving on to questions with Commissioner Roman.
Chair Berger, I'm sorry, this is Lieutenant Mulder. May I?
Yeah. Yes, Captain Mulder.
Yes, sir. Hi, Chair, Vice Chair, and commissioners and members of our city staff and our wonderful community of West Hollywood. I just wanted to, what Sergeant Yost was going over the information was indeed a request by Commissioner Soon Chung several meetings ago to talk about the activities, the operation activities when we do our operations with the cops entertainment policing team. So that's why we're including the information. So I don't know if you guys want to have that discussion about if you want to continue that information or not, but that's why it was being offered up.
Oh, very good. Very good. Thank you. I apologize, Sergeant Yost. Thank you. Okay. Do you want to go on to, let's go with Commissioner Roman because he's had some questions already.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. So yeah, I'm really confused as to how that call is just lost, but I kind of detailed my experience in an email. I think I sent it to everybody on the commission, and I'm just baffled that nobody can find that call, or that I had to go through what I had to go through when somebody was literally dying on the street right in front of me. Second, if the pickpocket arrests at the bars, from what I understand, Captain Mulder, you guys conducted like undercover sting operations. Is that true?
Yeah, so with regarding the pickpocketing, we've conducted operations with our entertainment policing team and our cops team, and they were either of a saturation patrol or plainclothes type of operation. Recently in March, on March 18th, we did conduct an undercover operation with members of our cops team, our entertainment policing team, our detective bureau, and our LASD Major Crimes Bureau, who served as the undercover people going into various bars in West Hollywood.
Got it. And if I can just ask, so this started in 2015. We are now in the year 2022. And it didn't just start in 2015. Like, I literally don't know a person that has not gotten their phone pickpocketed out of those bars. So it's like a huge problem. Why did it take like 6 years for you guys to, decide to put undercover people on there and try to bust these people? Like, I'm just wondering, like, why would it take 6 years to do that? And you know that if there's 100 phones reported stolen a month, that's actually 400. Because most people don't think like, oh shit, my phone just got pickpocketed. Let me call the West Hollywood Police Department and sit there for an hour and a half, wait for them to get there and file a police report. So 100 to me means 400. And I'm just wondering, why does it take like 5-6 years for you guys to do something?
Oh, well, first of all, to the point of reporting, yeah, we encourage everybody to report, and it's very important to report. It helps us track these types of cases, and it'll help us kind of recover property and identify suspects. So if you do report, we know that phone's stolen, and we find it on somebody, then we can point. With regard to the point, it's been 6 years. So I came back to the station at the end of 2018. And that, the first in 2019, it really, I'll have to go back and look at the statistics, but it wasn't really on our radar, the pickpocketing. I don't think they had gone up as significantly as they had gone up after the pandemic. So as you know, we had things shut down in 2020 through 2021. And when we started to kind of reopen and people started coming back out, we saw a really big spike in pickpocketing. So we started to address it at that point. I can't speak to the last 6 years, but if we weren't doing something, we should have, but we're doing something now. So I can go look at those old numbers to see where we're at, but the pickpocketing issue really wasn't on the radar until post-pandemic.
Got it. And Commissioner Berger, if I wanted to agendize something, should I do that now, or should we do it after we speak to Captain Mulder?
Why don't we wait until our work plan, because we got some other things on there as our priorities, and then you can bring it up and the commission will vote on it.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
Thank
you. Good questions, Commissioner Roman. Commissioner Sun Xiong.
Thank you so much. So I just want to pull back for a second, and I have a question around why this data is presented as such. So as I understand it, what we're looking at is March 2021 versus March 2022, freezing those 2 months, assuming no conditions have changed in those in the interim time, and then looking at whether there's been an uptick in each of the category of crimes. For me, what would be more helpful is looking at crime trends over the course of that year and what happened in between. But if we are presented with the data in this format, specifically what I requested was under each of the different categories of crime, if in addition to the 2021 blue line and 2022 orange line, we had crime suppression statistics and arrest statistics, as well as crime prevented statistics. I was told by the crime analyst, in addition to the contract bureau, that there is unfortunately no information to show efforts on prevented crime. But today it was discussed that there are crime suppression operations. So I just wanted to confirm whether or not there is information on the effects of those operations.
So I think how we would look at the operation, a lot of the operations that we conduct, let's say if we do a saturation patrol or a foot beat or a bike patrol, those kinds of high visibility out in the community operations, really the biggest goal is to a proactive approach to prevent crime, because our number one goal is to prevent crime from even happening, prevent somebody from being victimized. So those kinds of operations, that's the point of those type of operations. That's our goal for those, to prevent it. Now, to gather statistics on if crimes were prevented would be impossible. Because if somebody who was intent on committing a crime in West Hollywood drives into town and they see a bunch of deputy sheriffs driving around or on foot beat or on bikes, they might think they might decide to not commit a crime here and go somewhere else. That's crime prevention through high visibility patrol. So it's very hard to quantify what crimes we've prevented. However, then other ways that if we, like in some of the information that Sergeant Yost was providing, depending on what type of operation we're running, arrests were made. And as you heard, in one of the operations, quite a few arrests were made. So that's a way of quantifying. We're taking somebody off the street who has committed a crime. So, and that's a reactive approach, but at least getting that individual off the street so they won't continue to commit a crime. So it's hard to quantify what crimes we have prevented.
Right. And so I just want to confirm that there is no way to quantify crimes prevented. And then also thank you for verbally communicating the request for data from the previous couple of months. But I just want to clarify that my request is actually to have on this chart, in addition to the number of crimes per month, the number of crimes solved per month under each category, as well as the number of arrests per category. I also want to reiterate my suggestion that in addition to freezing and looking at March 2021 versus March 2022, we actually have information on trends over time.
Okay, so Commissioner Sung, do you want us to then cease the reports on the operations of the teams, and then we'll just move to arrests per category? And do you want to do that as per Part 1 category crimes?
Yes, ideally on the categories that are indicated on these charts. So Part 1
okay.
And part 2 if available.
And then so if we look at like last month, and we can tell you who, how many arrests were made under each of those crimes that occurred for last month. We can do that. With regard to solve, the investigation of a crime that's not immediately solved at the beginning, we arrest somebody and so basically the crime is solved. But if we get a report of a crime and detectives are investigating it, then it might the crime occurred in March, but they will develop information through March and April, and then maybe in May identify a suspect and arrest them, and the case will be solved then. But the solve won't, obviously it's from a March case in May. So sometimes that would be challenging, but we can just tell you what we'll do is just for the crimes that occurred, whatever, and usually there'll be an arrest made. That's the way of saying, of indicating for that month whether that crime was solved. However, the crimes that occurred in that particular month, March as we're talking about now, could be solved then down the line as well. So, right. And then with regard to our solve, I know you mentioned it in your opening comments with regard to the are solved cases. And forgive me if I misunderstood, because there's a strong possibility I'm old, I misunderstand a lot of things. But I think I thought that you had asked us for the solved rate for grand theft specifically, and those are the numbers we were giving you. That's not the solved rate for all of the Part 1 crimes reported each month.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm wondering if, to clarify, it would be possible on the next report, probably through an email in addition, to actually have that on paper, just to make sure that everyone, it's in the public domain, the whole commission has it, and we actually have numbers on solved crimes. And I recognize that investigations are ongoing, and I think potentially that makes the case for my earlier point that, freezing March of 2021 and comparing it to March of 2022 might not give the best picture of trends in terms of crime solved, crimes that are happening over time, and arrest rates. And so I'm wondering if in the next report, we can actually have some of those trends around solved crimes over time.
Okay, so so we want the arrest per category for Part 1 crimes, and then also solved as well. And then when you talk about the trends, do you have a particular method you were looking at or thinking about? Because we can have this discussion at another point, but to kind of look at a methodology that I think, and I'll check with our department, our crime analysts, and see if there's a methodology they have of looking at, quote, trends, and if that's something we do in our crime analysis. So I'm not sure if we have that. We may. And I'll see if we do. And what I can do, if we do, I can present it to the commission, and you all can decide if that's an acceptable process. If not, we can talk about it a different way and see if it's something that we can do. I think part of our discussion here at the Public Safety Commission, certainly in our the sheriff's presentation, we do talk about to a certain degree trends. We're looking at like maybe vehicle burglaries. If they're going up, then we see that's trending up. We've talked about the aggravated assaults have been up. We've broke those down to that, as kind of Commissioner Balbone referred to earlier, about there last year about 1/3 of the aggravated assaults were committed by transient individuals. So and we're I think up to this point it's about 20% for this year. About 20% of aggravated assaults are committed by transient individuals. So we kind of present that's some kind of trending information. I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but we do kind of, as we go month by month, we kind of do talk about some things like that.
Yeah, and I guess what I have in mind is how the FBI reports crime data, where it's not just month by compared to a month, but all of the months for that time period that we're talking about, and looking at how the numbers ebb up and down. So, I think another way to articulate my request is, because those percentages are oftentimes verbally stated, it would be helpful for us to actually see that presented and to understand what underlying information informs those percentages. And that can help, I think, some of the information which is shared back and forth actually be in a place where we can refer back to it.
Okay, yeah, we can look at that and see what some other ways that we have that information kind of visually for the pleasure of the commission to look at and see if it's more helpful. And back to your other question, I think about can we see if our work has paid off? I know into the end of 2021, as we approached, we were having, of course, the street robberies and so forth. And as we kind of went into prior to December, we were really concerned about December because the holiday season, people out shopping, it would certainly be an environment that somebody who wanted to commit a robbery would want to be in. So because of that, we ran quite a few operations with our cops and entertainment policing teams, and our Major Crimes Bureau came out. Our Operation Safe Streets Bureau also came out, and they assisted us, usually nightly, times that a lot of the robberies at the time were occurring, with saturation patrols. They did some undercover stuff. I think if you recall from one of the reports that I talked about, deputies, there a vehicle that had tinted windows, they were approaching the vehicle, and the vehicle tried to back into them. They were able to not be hit by the car and also detain the multiple individuals in the car who all had firearms and stolen merchandise that we believe were taken in robbery. So, and then the stats for robberies in December were actually, I think, lower than November. And then as we moved into January, they were still lower. And then February, they went up. So certainly I know that's a correlation, but it seems that's one way of kind of looking at it. If we're out there doing this kind of proactive work, it sometimes will prevent it from happening in that time period and a future time period. Just again, the numbers, that's how they kind of panned out.
Captain Mulder and commissioners, I want to frame this in a way that's exactly within our purview, so it keeps us exactly focused on what our outputs are. And so just let me read our purview on this particular area really quickly. I think you're referring to analysis in here. So we are to analyze the level of law enforcement needs and make policy recommendations to the City Council, which can include reimagining public safety through alternative community-based systems and mechanisms that are needed to achieve a safety for all West Hollywood community members. I think just helping us to stay focused on the clarity of what we're trying to output here too. I think that you guys are on the right track with this, but it may help Captain Mulder how to frame that, and Commissioner Soon-Shiong, when we move to some sort of policy recommendation, we can make it within that, exactly in that framework, and I think we'll get further. Captain Mulder, one question quick on the solve. To me, and I think just as a layman person might think, does that mean it's gone through been prosecuted or not? For me, that closes the whole loop. It's gone through the whole process. Can you just clarify really quickly what solved means?
Yes, so when our detective bureau brings a case to the district attorney, we believe, this person did that. And then the district attorney will look at it, and they might not file the case because they might not believe there's enough to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that it did happen, which is a different standard than probable cause to arrest. But we consider that a solve because we believe that's the person that did it. It's a separate issue whether the district attorney feels there's enough then to go to prosecute and achieve a successful prosecution. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's just important that I think our residents are feeling like, oh, it's done. The person's in jail or they got loose because they weren't innocent. So that's just something I think that we want to keep in mind when we say that it's solved or not. So, Commissioner Oliver.
Yeah, when we arrest somebody, I'm sorry, Commissioner Chair, but yeah, when we arrest
go
somebody,
ahead.
Really, that's when the work really begins to put together a whole case. And you heard Commissioner Roman speaking earlier how detectives often come by his business looking for video. It's a huge, very important piece of information, very important piece of evidence that we need in a lot of these cases. So there's a lot of additional legwork and putting together a case, because when we arrest somebody, and not to get in the weeds, I'll be quick, but when you arrest somebody, we arrest somebody probable cause. Probable cause is a different legal standard than really what the district attorney is looking at, because they have to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. So when the information comes to them, it has to be beyond a reasonable doubt, basically, to file the case. So from probable cause to beyond a reasonable doubt, there's a space there that our detectives fill in. So
what I'm saying is, if I'm a regular person and this guy's caused some problems in the area, and then it says it's solved, I'm thinking, I thought you guys said this was solved. What's he back here doing this again for? So I'm just trying to think like a regular person. And so there might be like an asterisk down what solved means, just for those people that think, how come you guys didn't, how come you let him out again, or whatever it is. So I just kind of just wanted to clarify for the people reading the reports. Commissioner Oliver.
Yes. So first, just wanted to say welcome to Sergeant Yost. I know you've been in WeHo for a few months now, but welcome to the meeting, and it's been nice to meet you out in public and see you out in public. One of the things that was brought up at the council meeting, the last council meeting, was a story of deputies running into, there was a pretty big fire at Councilmember Horvath's residence, the building where she lives, and deputies were among those who ran into the building to help pull people out. So I just wanted to also acknowledge that and thank those deputies for being willing to run in there to save people. I also wanted to ask Captain Mulder the same questions that I asked the fire department. The first is, how often are we having to ask other law enforcement agencies, Beverly Hills Police Department, LA Police Department, namely, for outside assistance? I know we have a mutual assistance agreement, but how often are we having to draw on that?
Yeah, Commissioner Oliver, that's a good question. It's not that often, but there are cases that we do. If there's a large event that might then turn violent, just to get people, deputies and officers, law enforcement here as soon as possible, then we have in the past used Beverly Hills and LAPD to do an initial response till more additional assets from the sheriff's department can arrive and kind of relieve them. They can go back to their jurisdictions and we can handle the situation. So it happens occasionally, but not that often. But we also reach out to our own department. We have our sister stations that are nearby. If ever we have an event, any kind of event we have in the city where we have an operations plan and an event action plan, we notify our neighboring sheriff stations that they are basically on tactical alert, on call, that if we have an issue, they're ready to go to send half their field force here at a moment's notice. So if it's a planned event that we're aware of, we have an operations plan for it, and we are also design a tactical plan around there if we need additional assets, and they're usually from our department. And then basically is how we handle those types of issues.
Thank you. And then I guess the same follow-up question is, do you think, based on our geography, the population, and then I guess pertinent to the sheriff's department, the increase in population, I guess that would also be pertinent to the fire department. Is there a sufficient force in our city?
Well, I certainly with obviously West Hollywood is a growing city. I think when you look at Ed's comments, Commander Marissa's comments from the past Monday night, we've had a lot of new hotels in the city. Certainly, our residential population hasn't grown as much, but our population of people coming into the city to enjoy all the wonderful things the city has to offer. Again, as we grow with additional hotels, additional apartment buildings, it would certainly be something that the city, I'm sure, will look at in increasing law enforcement here. Clearly, I'm a little bit biased about this. I think more police out and about, more sheriff's deputies out and about is a good thing for community safety and visibility. And as we kind of discussed earlier, having that proactive, preventative action, having deputies out and about is something that would maybe cause people that want to come here to do wrong to not come here and do wrong when they see police around. So I think increasing as we grow, it's certainly something that will probably be looked at.
Thank you. That was you answered my follow-up question, which was, A, do we have a sufficient force, and B, if so, do we have those resources for that foot patrol? Because I do think that presence would be very helpful in the community.
Well, yeah, as Commander Ramirez talked about too, there's different ways to kind of supplement that. I know you've been talking about foot beats and increasing foot beats. Well, we do indeed right now have foot beats. We have them on the east side and we have them on the west side. They are hired with overtime money. There's only a certain amount of that. So they're only on certain days at certain times. And so we do have foot beats. We have also park patrols, additional park patrols, which are hired through overtime as well through a federal grant. Then when we run operations with our cops and entertainment policing team, we do various things. We got the bikes back in order and they did a couple bike things last year. We do foot beats and as I discussed earlier, saturation patrols and other kinds of operations. So if foot beats are something that the city and the commission want to increase, as Commander Ramirez mentioned, they could buy additional deputies, or it's something that could be hired on overtime, which is less of an expense and something that is changeable. As things change, you can go more or less, whatever your pleasure. It would be nice to see the foot beats across the entire city, not just east and west. It would also, I think, having a dedicated foot beat is really important, I think, for businesses and community, for those connections. And it's something that also with our patrol deputies, we can't just take patrol deputies out of the car and have them walking around, because they need to respond to calls, and they need to, when they're not responding to calls, being proactive and visible around the city to prevent crime from happening. And if we take a deputy, have them park their car, whatever our regular patrol deputies, and they start walking around and they get an emergent call, like we had several months ago, baby not breathing, the time it takes them to run to their car and then respond to the call delays their arrival at that call, and the chance of saving that life diminishes the longer it takes to get there. So our patrol has to remain in our patrol, and a lot of the foot beats and bike patrols and all that have to be supplemental.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Balbone.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, Captain Mulder, and I have some ideas. So I agree that the trends are important. And one of the things that, I don't know if you remember, I did this a long time ago, and I know that we did see a positive trend as a result of some of the efforts around vehicle burglary, because the trend line changed. But we have all of the data going backward in our regular reports, and it's as simple as taking it and putting together what was the trend in 20, what was the trend in 21, what's the trend now in 22, and just doing month over month in a trend line. And it's actually not hard to do because the data is there. It's just going to take somebody going in. And I do think that a trend line is more important than year over year, because it tells you if something changed. So I have some thoughts. I'd love to sit down with crime analysts if you have that time, and maybe Commissioner Seung-Shung and I can do that with you. But one of the questions that I have, because we seem to be asking a lot of questions about prevention, and interestingly, I'd like to understand when we look at Part 2 crimes, when we talk about solve rates and we talk about prevention, what happens with the Part 2 crimes? Because I know we emphasize Part 1 quite a bit, but I know that there's time and expense and resources spent on Part 2 as well. And, it's kind of interesting to me that we talk a lot about prevention when we get to the sheriff's department. We don't ask fire, have you prevented any fires lately? Because I think we assume there's going to be a need to respond when there is an emergency. And I just want to, I'm trying to wrap my own head around, like, how much can you prevent and how much do you need to react to? Because just like fires, they happen, crime happens also. And I think there's probably a balance as we have this conversation of time that would be spent preventing and responding. And I think that's what people are trying to get at. So it's not a fully formed thought, but it's just an observation. And I don't know if there are statistics that you have or resources you have that could help us think about the balance between prevention and responding. But that's one of the things that I have top of mind. So again, happy to help with the trend lines. I agree that it's needed. It really does help see if we've seen a change, both because we've had maybe a successful arrest or a change like we had with what was happening before with vehicle burglaries. But agree with that. When we think about solve rates and reactions, I'd like to understand it across all categories of crime, because I think you're involved and your officers are involved with solving crime across all categories, not just the part ones. And there might be actions taken for part two. And I'm, you know, I've seen the reports. I've not asked about the part two crimes, but I'm sure there's activity there if someone's a repeat offender over and over and over again. But those are just some of the thoughts that I have on that.
Was there something you wanted responded to, Commissioner Balbone?
No, it just as we're looking at some of this, I'd like to make sure that when we look at the solves and the rate of closure, that we're looking at both part one and part two, because there may be time and follow-up spent, and we're trying to get a sense for how the resources are used, I think, is what we're trying to do. So if we're going to look at part one, let's look at part two. And then also just volunteer to look at the trends, because I do think they're valuable.
So are you suggesting there's something additional that should be on the report that you would like to see on the report?
As we look at solve rates, if we're going to look at solve rates and any follow-up on crime versus just reporting the crime that occurred, I'd like to look at it for both part one and part two crimes. Because if we're using resources for both categories, it's important to understand that.
Okay. Commissioner Oliver.
So just to kind of piggyback on what Commissioner Balbone had said, I think that there's a unique element to what police do. Code enforcement doesn't do proactive enforcement. Fire doesn't drive around looking for fires. They're on call. But the sheriff's department is in cars, whether it's deputies or volunteers. Something that just came to mind was a few months ago when a toddler was choking, suffocating on a bread bag clip, and the first available first responder was the sheriff's department. They were able to get there first, and because the sheriff's deputies are BLS, basic life support trained, they were able to rescue this child. Permanent brain damage can set in as early as 4 minutes after somebody stops breathing. So they were able to get there in that time. And that is an on the ground reality that I think, as we're talking about, the role of deputies in the community, we have to be aware of and also appreciative of that. There is a reason that we need deputies out in the field.
Okay, we have one public comment. Yola Dore. Yola Dore, do you have a public comment?
Yes. Chair and Commissioners Yola Dore, and I'm speaking for myself tonight, not as a DAB liaison. First of all, I'd like to commend Commander Mulder and congratulate Commandant, is that how you say it? Ramirez on their promotions, and thank them for the service to this community. Second of all, I'd like to ditto whoever said boots on the ground, more officers out there going about our community, getting to know businesses and people in this community. As a disabled senior, I value that. I also would take a big value in something we requested years ago, which was a substation on the east side, mainly because of traffic and how long it takes the officers to try to get over here if there's a situation that really needs them more than just our block by block personnel. So these are some requests from people out in the community besides myself who have experienced situations where we need to call the sheriff, and also to bring up very quickly, and it's not in this vein, the scooter situation, which has posed a threat to many of us, including the mayor's sister. So I hope when you're talking about funds, you won't cut anybody because we need more, not less. And we really need the boots on the ground. And as I believe the captain said, it would help if they weren't just east and west, but all over the city. So just a thought. I know I'm not on your commission, but just the thought that I wanted to be able to express tonight. And thank you, Chair Berger, and commissioners and staff for allowing me.
Thank you, Yola Dore. We have another comment, public comment, MR.
Hi, Manny Rodriguez, resident of West Hollywood. Congratulations, commissioners. This has been one of the most difficult commission meetings that I've subjected myself to in 20 years of being a resident. This is like a kindergarten class on policing. Many of you are not paying attention. Your cameras are off for an extended period of time. What are you doing with your cameras off? You should be on camera paying attention. One potty mouth comment from one commissioner, not good. And also, if you talk about wanting for many years to have cops on beats, walking the beat, did it occur to any of you, as Lieutenant Mulder described very, very well, that if you want cops walking around, you need more of them? Because as it was described, if they're walking around and they cannot get to my call for service, hot lickety split. That's when I want the cops to show up. That's how I want them to show up, fast. And if they're walking around the east side without a car and you only have 50 deputies, as this commission has recommended, we're in a lot of trouble. So that's why you don't have cops on beats walking around, because you need more money. You're not supposed to defund the police. That's an old, tired message. You need to fund the police, as our own president has said.
Thank you, Manny. Good suggestions for us to improve, everybody. Dimitri Kermani.
Yes, good evening. First and foremost, I want to thank a few of the commissioners who attended the city council meeting last week. Commissioners Balbone, Hallman, and Oliver. I think it was very important that you were there. It showed that you took your vote from February very seriously, and you wanted to really consider the consequences, hear out the public, and understand the council's perspective on it as well. It's not a criticism towards the other commissioners. You all have your own schedules and agendas. They're not my business, and sometimes we can't be at every place at once. But I think it is very important to see the commissioners at these city council meetings when we're discussing these public safety issues. And so I do want to praise those that were there for being there. At the same time, I do agree. I believe we do need more police on the streets. As a commercial landlord in the city, I've seen the uptick in homelessness, and I understand we have a mental health crisis that's a entirely different subject. But unfortunately, some of these homeless, these transients, unfortunately do become violent. And I've seen the violence myself, and it's been getting worse. Captain Mulder mentioned, I believe it was either Captain Mulder or Sergeant Yost, that 20% of the assaults that we're seeing occur between transients, and that number seems to continue to escalate. And so I would like to see more deputies in our city, and I hope that the commission really considers this, because we need to be listening to the residents.
Okay, thank you, Dimitri.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're just about done. One more, I think we'll be done with the public comment on this item. Victor Omolchenko.
Thank you very much to the Sheriff's Department for this report. And you know, one word that I heard from the city staff and others is, you know, it's already April, mid-April almost, and we're keeping talking about a budget. Well, that budget that's going to start July 1 is going to be probably the subject of a subcommittee meeting by the city council, the 2 members who are on the budget subcommittee. So I trust that everyone here who is concerned will analyze that budget and go to the subcommittee hearing before it goes to the full budget, because these are big documents. I used to get hard copies. So I thank those commissioners who look through budgets and ask questions. And it's not just about public safety, it's about all the other things that are happening in this city. So the budget is coming up. Let's not get lost. Let's get involved. It's time for the people who are complaining about things to analyze the budgets, except for the couple of people who usually show up, and come to the meetings and tell us what you feel about the money. Whether you want more cops, less cops, you want to keep it stable. That's my opinion. I want to keep it stable, but let's get involved. It's already April, and before you know it, decisions are going to be made. I hope to see many, many people from all the neighborhood watch groups and West Hollywood West and the Norma Triangle. East Side, let's talk about the budget. About the current report, on October 28th, a young woman last year was murdered on the East Side. By November 5th, the Los Angeles County coroner identified her as 23-year-old Kayla Hurst. Since then, at least for me, crickets. What has happened to that case? That's why I like hearing the commission saying that they want more data, more follow-up. So my question tonight would be, I believe that happened at that new Avalon apartment complex that has the Trader Joe's and the other businesses, whether it happened on the street or a back alley or in the apartment, I don't know. But I would like to know, to calm community concerns, and I have heard concerns from people on the east side and throughout, what are the results? And if there were an arrest that was made, and maybe I missed it, if an arrest is made, at which point, how is that communicated to you and the public so that we're not all freaked out about crimes against our bodies? The property stuff, yes, that's bad. But the aggravated assaults, the rapes, the murders, the homicide, I want to hear the follow-up. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Victor. Okay. In the future, I think that we're going to need to figure out this public commenting. Roxanne, before we go to you, because we need to take into account the length of the meeting. And if we knew we were having this many public comments, we could have reduced it down to 2 minutes or something. So we're going to have to work on this, just these impromptu public comments. Roxanne, go ahead. You'll be the last one.
Okay, thank you. I'll make it quick. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, I just want to give a shout out to Nika Suncheon. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I feel very lucky because I find this commissioner as sharp as a tack, and I don't think there's nothing wrong with wanting to know data either. So I think she's very meticulous and bold, and I think it's something we really need. Also, really quick about the cameras. I don't know what the laws are, but maybe the building owners, like our building, we don't have any cameras. There's no security, and we live in the alley above Sunset. So I think the building owners should also invest in, I don't know what the city can do to encourage apartment building owners to have their own cameras, not just rely on the city. Thank you. Thank you for all the hard work.
Okay, thank you, Roxanne. Okay, let's move on to the next item, which is the commission work plan and request tracking.
Thank you, Chair. So one thing to wrap up the sheriff's report tonight, just wanted to call attention again that we're still working on concerns regarding criminal report taking. And Commander Ramirez gave an update at the last city council meeting, just some of the efforts that he has made to ensure that deputies are appropriately taking reports. What I would want to remind you all, if you hear any complaints at all, please encourage folks to come forward so Acting Captain Mulder can look into any allegations of a deputy trying to thwart a police report. So just wanted to end there on that. With regard to 9F and 10A, we're going to take these two items together. I know it's getting late, so I'm going to be brief here. First of all, I want to thank Commissioners Oliver and Hallman for their continued assistance on the emergency plan. They are reading pages and pages and pages of documents, so thank them when you have a moment. For the May Public Safety Commission meeting, we are slated to be back in Plummer Park rooms 5 and 6. The intent is to move the Public Safety Commission to the council chambers, but since that is on a Granicus system, it's going to take the city clerk a couple months to get that sorted out for us. So for the May meeting, we will be back in person, Plummer Park, rooms 5 and 6, 6 o'clock, and there will not be a remote option possible that evening. The technology does not exist at Plummer Park to allow for that. Also at the May meeting, we are scheduled for an update from the Center for Policing Equity. They're very close to having some findings. So their representative will be attending the May meeting. In addition, Commissioner Soon-Shiong had asked for some additional information regarding our contracts and social services that provide mental health services and the types of funding and salaries that those folks get. So David Juni is available to come to the May meeting if you all would like him to attend the May meeting as well. He could give a very brief update and just answer questions if the commission's amenable to that. So staff is bringing forward CPE for sure in May. And if you'd like to hear from David Juni, just like a quick consensus, yes or no would be helpful right now.
So can you repeat that concisely, what David Juni
So there were some questions asked at the last Public Safety Commission meeting about the city's social services contracts that provide mental health services, kind of in the context of a cost comparison, 300,000 for a deputy versus, 176,000 for the DMH clinician, and the other contracts that the city has. So David is available to come to the next meeting if you all want to get into that discussion to kind of talk about how those services are funding. If you all feel like you have enough information, then we don't need to bring him back, but I'm just offering that as an option if you would like him to attend in May.
Okay, I think let's look at our work plan, commissioners, and decide. We will have the CPE, right? And you can look at our work plan right now, and you can decide if you want David Juni to come or another item on your next commission meeting.
And
That
I have
may help you decide.
one more item coming as well. So, so before we add anything else from the work plan, CPE is a yes. You need to let me know if David Juni is a yes or no for you. And then I'm going to launch into the city's community safety and well-being plan next. So I wouldn't recommend adding anything additional than those items at this point. But I would need to know, just for scheduling purposes, if you would like David Juni available in person next month.
Okay, go ahead, commissioners.
Are we going to have, I'm so sorry, I'm just jumping in. Are we gonna, I'm concerned that even with those, just with the CPE, we're gonna hit 3 hours.
Yeah, so here's what I would suggest then, because I know it's late, we're all getting tired. I will have, I'll speak with David. Maybe we could give you all kind of a written update for your packet. And then if there's additional questions at that point, then we could schedule him for June or a further meeting. Would that work for folks? Okay.
Consensus, that works for me, but it's
great. Okay, so let's try that approach for that for now. Moving on.
Is there anyone opposed? Maybe that's the way we should.
Yeah, anyone opposed?
So
yes.
As we look at effectiveness, I think we have to ask the same question. What are the metrics of effectiveness of our behavioral health and other social service outreaches? Because I don't want to assume that they're effective, right? And I don't know what measures we use, but I would like to at least ask that question because that's something that we're asking here. I also think that, Kristen, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're going through their budget process now. So I don't know that we're going to have the whole view because there's new entrants. So do we want to do it before? And I'd almost want to ask David, when is the right time to ask about the services and who will be providing them ongoing and their costs, because they're rebidding right now, right? And the costs could shift.
So that's a really good point. So why don't we do this? Since they are in the middle of their RFP process, once the Human Services Commission starts that, I would encourage all of you to drop into that meeting as often as you can. But then we could bring David and team back to talk about what's the new funding for October 1st going forward. They're a little offset from the fiscal year. And then we can get more into it then. That's a really good point. And again, if we feel like we need more information between now and then, we can definitely do that. But I'm just going to launch into the next thing here. Sorry, I'm recovering from being sick, so I'm kind of at the end of my time here tonight. So with regard to the city manager's project for the city's community safety and well-being plan, as you all know, community safety has been a long-standing priority for the city, and city staff have been working for several months out of the city manager's office and multiple departments on engaging a consultant to assist in developing a comprehensive community safety and well-being plan. The city has formally contracted with Strategy Corp, a professional services firm based in Ontario, Canada, to guide us through the process. Strategy Corp's team is experienced in working with local and regional governments, police organizations, and the nonprofit sector to develop and implement community safety efforts. This project will include the creation of strategic goals, the prioritization of new and existing community safety and well-being initiatives, and an implementation plan for the city to move forward. The ultimate goal is to develop a single integrated strategy to help streamline efforts and optimize our community safety and social service ecosystem. Strategy Corp's one of their next steps is to interview the Public Safety Commission as a body. We're going to schedule this as a special meeting because our meetings are pretty robust as it is, to gather your perspectives on, as mentioned above, things like service gaps, risks, barriers, opportunities for improvement and collaboration. So tonight, what I do need from all of you, if we could actually get this done, then we won't need a doodle poll. I have 3 suggested dates for a 90-minute special meeting for the Public Safety Commission. And I'm just going to take these dates one by one to see if we can get one of them to work for all of you. So the first date that the team is available is Tuesday, April 19th at 5 p.m. The second date is Wednesday, April 27th at 4 p.m. And there's also a neighborhood watch meeting that evening. And then Wednesday, May 11th at 4 p.m.
Commissioners, do you need time to look at your calendars and figure out your schedules? I don't know if I can answer those to any of that right now without really looking and thinking through.
So what I could do is I will email these dates if people don't have their calendars in front of them to set that tonight. But I will need to get responses from you all quickly tomorrow to be able to move this forward.
And do we have a choice on this? This was not mandated by council, right?
I would not encourage the Public Safety Commission to refuse this request because the Public Safety Commission is a huge part of the community's safety and well-being plan. So this is something that I see as mandatory for you all.
And Kristen, do we all have to attend the same session? Or is there an ability?
They're hoping to have you as a body. If that doesn't work, where we can get the 7 of you on one of these 3 dates, then I'll go back and revisit with the consultant to see what we could possibly do.
Okay, first of all, commissioners.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Interrupting. Kristen, as you mentioned, we do have our watch meeting on the 27th. Can we drop that date from the calendar and just work with the other 2?
Of course, I'll send the other 2 to everybody via email.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, first, let's just get a consensus that we want this or not. Just by anybody opposed? Okay, so let's go with the dates, Kristen, get those to us.
Okay, and again, just so you can write them down tonight, because I'm going to be looking for your answer tomorrow, would be Tuesday, April 19th at 5 p.m. and Wednesday, May 11th at 4 p.m. We're going to start there. These meetings will be remote, I should say that, because they're in Canada, so that should make it a little bit easier for folks to attend.
Okay.
And with that, Chair, we could turn it back to item number 11.
Okay, I think that we've got some options of what we want to put on the next agenda. And I think that we should hear all of our different options. Commissioner Roman had one that he wanted to present as a possibility. So keep in mind our timing, things that are urgent or not, and let's decide on what we want, considering all of our different options on the next meeting. We have the CPE meeting, which is going to be pretty long. So Commissioner Roman, do you want to go ahead and make your motion or what you want to put as an option for us to look at?
Yeah, I would love to agendize this pickpocketing cell phone thing, because what I don't understand about it is that this has been going on for 7 years. And just recently, they said that they did some undercover sting operations and made 2 arrests. So I just want to know, I would love to get some data on why this was not addressed for 7 years. When it was addressed, what actually happened? Where did they go? What did they do? Who did they arrest? what happened with those arrests? Where are they? Did Gaskin drop charges? Are they being prosecuted? Like, I just want to understand what happened, because from what I understand, this is a gang of people that come to these bars every weekend and grab phones. And I just feel like if we did something 7 years ago, busted a bunch of people and sent a message across, this would have ended. And I just personally, just quite frankly, don't trust what the police are telling us when they tell us that they did these things and they arrested these people, because I did my own research and I found that, you know, this has never taken place. So I just want to get, and I could be wrong, but I did ask around to all the bigger bars and no one remembers anything like this happening. So I just want to know, I want to do a deep dive into this and really find out what happened, who was arrested, where, how, where are they today, just so we have a better understanding of all this. And so I'd love to be able to get that research by next meeting.
So if you want to, how about you put that as a motion and then as a, and then leave it up to the commissioners to decide when that could be. Maybe you could put that on our work plan if they all agree. And then they can decide if they want it amongst their other options for the next meeting.
Sure,
So do you want to kind
whatever
of
you suggest.
Yeah, formulate it into sort of a motion, and then we'll see if we want to put that on our work plan, and then we'll decide which items we want to go with at our next meetings.
Okay, I
So
want to
can you
make a
kind of
motion.
formulate that?
I want to make a motion to do a deep dive into this cell phone pickpocket fiasco that's been going on since 2015.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Does anybody want to discuss this before we vote? Commissioner Oliver, do you have your hand up for this discussion?
Not for this.
Okay, roll call.
So to confirm, the second was Vice Chair Roche. Okay, so roll call, Commissioner Balbone, please.
So can I ask a question? What is it that we're asking for? Because I heard the word fiasco, I heard cell phones.
So we want
not
to
sure what we want to do.
We want to find out, this started in 2015. Why did it take 7 years for them to investigate this and do an undercover operation? B, what happened with this undercover operation? Where did it take place? Who did it? Who was arrested? What happened to the people that were arrested? Did they get out? Are they in jail? Like, I just want to understand what exactly happened what happened at this undercover investigation? Where did it take place? And I just want to get all the details on it.
I'm wondering
Chair
if
Booker, this is Lieutenant Mulder.
Yes. Yes, go ahead,
Chair
Captain.
Berger, I'm sorry. May I? Yeah, may I? I'm sorry to interrupt your conversation, but may I?
Yes.
Just to let you know, we did have information on the pickpocketing to present tonight, but I know you we kind of moved on from the report, but we did have information regarding that, some of the stuff that Commissioner Roman had asked for. And we can present it at the next meeting.
Great. I also asked if it could be emailed, and you said that you weren't sure if you have the time to do so. So you could also include it in an email, and I can share it with everybody.
I've also been speaking, I'm going to jump in for a second, Bill, with the city clerk. So we're trying to stop all of the emails flying around outside of the meeting and to keep the discussion public, transparent during your commissioner comments and during the agenda itself. So we certainly want to encourage commissioners to ask any question they think of, but it'll be answered at the public meeting so everybody can have the same information. What we could do is have Acting Captain Mulder just kind of rehash the pickpocket at the next meeting in May during the sheriff report as one option, as a possibility.
Would that solve it for you, Commissioner Roman, and the second by Vice Chair Roche, if it fell underneath the?
Well, yeah, I mean, Captain Mulder wasn't able to tell us why this has been going on for 7 years and nothing's happened up until recent. So, Captain Mulder, if you can please figure out what went on there and why this took so long to take care of.
Yeah, yes, Commissioner Roman, absolutely. In addition to the questions you had regarding the, like within the last year, pickpockets and the disposition of those, then with the new question that came up today regarding, what's happened over the last 6 years, I'll definitely look into it. We'll look at the numbers and see how things were happening 6 years ago to date.
Great.
Absolutely.
Okay, do you want to drop your motion then and settle for that? For it falls underneath the report next meeting?
Sure.
Okay. Commissioner
So
Oliver.
Can I ask a question? We have a tracker now. Is this going to get put on the tracker? And are we going to track it and then
Yes.
close it? Okay,
Yes.
thank you. I just want to make sure we're tracking the stuff that we're asking for, because I know people ask for things and we want to make sure we get them, close them and move on. So I just want to be sure we're tracking. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Oliver.
One thing I'd like to agendize for our future meeting, perhaps next month, is to have a representative from the volunteer program at the sheriff's station present on the program itself, what it entails, what they're looking for, how it helps the community. I think, especially if we can stick to the kind of time guidelines that we've discussed, the 10 minutes, I think, is a guideline, that it would be really helpful for the community to know that is an option. And the other thing that I'd like to agendize is the potential for funding that program, that a small investment in that program could have a sizable impact in terms of adding unarmed members of the community as liaisons in the community, as we talk about alternatives to policing, to law enforcement.
Okay, we had, and it's recorded, that seemed like just a few months ago, where we had a sheriff's volunteer came and gave a presentation. I think we may have even put it on the WeHo website.
It was. Do we want to... I think that the focus was more on anti-Semitism with his presentation, and somewhat on the program itself. But I think it would be.
That was separate. That was Dimitri, I think you're talking about. It was Richard Best who came and he explained the whole sheriff's volunteer program, how you get involved, and it's on a YouTube video. Just seemed like a few months ago. I felt my questions were all answered on that. So up to you guys.
Is there, and then the other half of that is specifically the thing that I would like to see additional funding for is the civilian vehicles. That's one area that I think the infrastructure is lacking a bit, and that's not a major investment, but it would allow for those civilian eyes and ears in the community.
Anybody want to weigh in before you, or want to second that as your motion?
And the other question, I'm sorry.
You want to clarify that kind of in a more concise motion, and then we'll see if you get a second.
Sure. Well, I guess first I would ask Kristen two questions. One, is it still, because I know that the budget discussions are ongoing at council. If we agendize this as a recommendation for next month, would there be time for it to be meaningful?
No.
No.
Sorry, that process is done. Although I will say the station has alerted staff to the possibility of funding a sheriff's volunteer vehicle. So that is part of the package I'll be giving to the city manager already for consideration.
Is there any way to voice support for that in an official way that would be timely?
During the official budget process.
Okay, at council.
Yes.
Thank you.
So subcommittee meeting, email your council member, however you would make any type of comment on any budget item.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Oliver. Do we have any more that you guys want to bring forward to put on a future agenda, and then we can make some decisions on?
Yeah, and Chair, I would
Wonderful.
hold where you're at right now for May. The Center for Policing Equity discussion could be lengthy. Now we've got an additional pickpocket discussion for the sheriff's report. I think you're good for May, and then at the May meeting we can discuss June.
Anybody oppose that suggestion? Okay, I agree too. I think we're going to have plenty for that. So let's, any more on the work plan? Okay, do we have any more public comments? Victor Omolchenko, can you keep it to 2 minutes, Victor?
Yes, I will. And thank you very much, Chair Berger. And thank you all commissioners for this very robust meeting. And I'd also like to say that I want to thank the 9, if my notes are correct, Chair Berger, 9 members of the public came out to speak, and several spoke several times, like me and Manny Rodriguez. So that took 39 minutes of time for a monthly meeting, and you only meet once a month. I don't know whether, when I was a public facilities commissioner, we had in our guidelines that we had to stop our meetings, I think, at 10:30. I don't know what this time constraint is. Maybe you're all running somewhere because you have other jobs. But given all of this stuff, all the concern about public safety, I want to know. I've been hearing you say, Tori, oh, well, we're running out of time, and oh, the public. Other times we always hear, why isn't the public here? There's nobody here. There's only him and her there. What's going on? So I just ask you, when you have a busy agenda, is it you are limited from 6 p.m. to 3 p.m. to 9 p.m.? Well, then put that in the agenda, and then the public will know. But I really think it's good that the public is showing up and making comments. And the other thing I wanted to say is, well, I'll share this at another meeting, but I hear people asking about the budget. And I guess what I'm learning is, for the budget that starts July 1st, you better start talking about meaningful impact, probably around Halloween time or Thanksgiving, because it seems like stuff has been completed. And, it's a process. We're all learning. But I just want to thank you all for looking at the finances, at the budgets, and making our governmental programs and our contracts accountable. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Victor. Any more public comment? Okay. Commissioner comments. Okay. We're adjourned.
Really quickly, I just wanted to congratulate Commissioner Roman. I saw on Facebook he announced the pregnancy. So congratulations on your second child on his way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night, everyone.